Hello again, one and all, and welcome to the fourth episode of ThROH The Years, the podcast where two burrito fans go through every single Ring of Honor show until they get tired of it, chronologically from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame, and my co-host, as always, is Matt Feuerstein. Matt, how you doing?
Well, this time you gave an introduction that I can actually agree with because I do like burritos very much. And that's all I have to say about that.
Fine, brings us together.
Yes.
This show is going to have a lot of segments on this Ring of Honor show we're reviewing, so I think we're going to cut straight to it this time. And again, as always, any contact information we'll give out at the end of the show. So, fourth Ring of Honor show too. We are reviewing today Road to the Title, which took place on June 22nd, 2002 at the Murphy Rec Center in Philadelphia, just like every other Ring of Honor show so far. One thing to note here is I believe this is the only time Ring of Honor ever had a 2-month break between shows. They skipped May, and I have no idea why. I couldn't find out why. I don't know if that was just to make sure they could get everyone here. Like I think you said just on the last episode, maybe they wanted to make sure they could get all these names together, so they needed a special date. Maybe it was as just a matter of they were still kind of feeling out how often to run. But I mean, looking through the schedule, I don't think they ever, I mean, maybe something's happened recently between tapings, but I don't think they ever went a month without a show again.
I mean, I think it was probably that Murphy Rec Center was such a hot venue at the time, and they just couldn't get it booked for a Saturday night. It was just, all the big names coming through.
Well, actually, if this was one more review in the future, this would be perfect because then the Murphy Rec Center gets literally hot, temperature-wise.
Yes.
But the attendance for the show was listed as 450, which would be the biggest so far. Dave Meltzer and the Observer said they actually had to add some chairs for the show. And I will say, looking at when the show cuts away from the hard camera, it did look like there was a few more rows of people maybe on the other sides of the building. So I don't know if this was a case of just absence making the heart grow fonder or the idea of a big tournament. But it actually is kind of not super impressive, but kind of impressive to see, this is the first show out of the four. They don't have Eddie, well, not the first show, but the second that they don't have Eddie Guerrero. But the first time they didn't have Eddie Guerrero, the show took a kind of a dip in attendance. And this one, they don't really have any huge outside name other than Jerry Lynn, who I don't think is a huge name. And they do, their best crowd yet.
Well, I think they were building their reputation. People had probably started to see the first two shows. They had matches on those two shows that were really awesome. So I could see getting 450 in that part of the country, I think, is not too difficult if you have a product that has a lot of buzz. And I think they were at that level now. And besides Eddie Guerrero, I do think that this lineup was, on paper, easily the best that they had so far.
Yeah, just tons of possibilities. And we start the show with we get a big close-up of a Low-Ki tattoo, and then we zoom out to see Low-Ki's backstage with his regular New York entourage of the Hit Squad and Homicide, and they're all trying to pump Low-Ki up. Monster Mac tells Low-Ki respect, honor, and discipline are the things that make up Low-Ki. Mafia tells him that the tournament's about nobody but Low-Ki, not even Christopher Daniels, which makes Low-Ki all growly and Low-Ki like. And then finally Homicide, I love, just comes in and is the most Homicide he could possibly be. He's just like, yo, Ki, kill that dude.
I realized that was like a catchphrase of Homicide at that time. Like, I didn't realize it at the time, but he says in a lot of promos that he's just going to kill people. And it's an apropos catchphrase for a man named Homicide.
Yeah, I never even put two and two together of Homicide and his love of killing people, but I doubt it was even a conscious effort, which makes it better. And at this point, Low-Ki starts throwing pretty hard forearms into a concrete wall, being all pumped up like crazy-ass Low-Ki gets pumped up. And then he yells into the camera that it's not over between him and Christopher Daniels, and that the Ring of Honor title will be his. And
I just wrote, Ki gives intense but lame promo on Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because in wrestling, I feel like as fans, we ask for guys to be authentic, and it's so kind of hammy, but at the same time, it really does feel authentic. Like,
Yeah.
this feels like I don't doubt that this is low key.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that
Maybe that's not a
says, but
great thing. Yeah.
yeah. But you're right.
But then we get a Ring of Honor standard techno music video, but this time we get kind of a slapdash little highlight video of Philadelphia road signs, because this
Yeah.
is road to the title, road. And they have a little caption that says all roads lead to Philadelphia. And then they do their usual thing that's kind of annoying, where they have a video of every entrance we're going to see later anyway. And the thing I thought was funny, I noticed this time, was they used like a different transition effect for every single entrance, and it really felt like they were just that someone got Pro Tools or like Adobe Edit or something for the first time.
Adobe Premiere.
Yeah, Adobe Premiere, that's it. That's what I was looking for. And they were going through every like different wipe one to the other. I don't know if we saw Star Wipe, but we saw pretty much every transition just, just like one by one. It was really kind of pretty funny to me.
It's like when I was making PowerPoints in grad school. Just play with all the wipes. It's the most fun thing you could do on PowerPoint.
And the great thing is, once you see a few different wipes, I don't care if it's a PowerPoint presentation or an ROH entrance video, all you start looking for is the next wipe. Like, what's it going to be? Is it going to turn to 4 squares? Is there going to be an American flag draped over the screen for a second? I don't know.
Did they do the 4-square wipe?
I'm not even sure. Like, I just was lost in the bliss of ever-changing wipes. Don't cut that, anybody. But first match today on the show is... Okay, actually, one thing we have to address I think we should do here before we get to the matches is both on this DVD and even just reading like the Observer and stuff from the time, is Ring of Honor sold this night as 4-man mini tournaments, and not what it really in actuality it was, which was a 16-man tournament where the first 2 rounds took place tonight. Like, reading the Observer, Dave was like, ROH has announced a 4-man mini tournaments and all this stuff. And even the commentators tonight talk about it as if it's 4, and everything's separated into blocks, which again doesn't make sense, because if they're 4 separate tournaments, why do you need, what's a block A and a block B? You only need it if it's a larger tournament. It just almost seemed like maybe someone in Ring of Honor was scared that the idea of you're only seeing the 2 rounds of a tournament that will conclude at the next show might not be as enticing.
Well, I thought this was pretty lame too. It's like, is the NCAA March Madness tournament 4 separate tournaments also? Because they also have 4 blocks and build to a Final 4. Yeah,
and the 4 teams, or in this case the 4 wrestlers, they're not winning anything but the right to go into another match, which to me, like, a tournament's supposed to no one's remembering, like, oh, do you remember who won the Road to the title Block C tournament? What a prestigious honor. Like, it's only serving to go to the final.
Was it Daniels? Did Daniels win Block C?
I honestly, no. I didn't even mark down the blocks. I am doing as a vote of protest here. I am referring to these round matches as first round and second round tonight. I refuse to indulge in the blocks.
That's what she said, she being an obstinate 7-year-old. Doesn't want to play blocks anymore. Too old for that.
I could go for some blocks right now.
Yeah.
But what we got instead of blocks was the very first round match of the night, and the first match overall, and that was American Dragon versus Biohazard. And American Dragon here beats Biohazard in 2:31 when Dragon makes Biohazard submit to the cattle mutilation. And for those who don't know who Biohazard is, I'll say I don't blame you. He was another Texas Wrestling Academy student. Quite a few of them were coming to Ring of Honor at this point. And we'll see him on a few more Ring of Honor shows, but he really won't make much of an impression. And he doesn't really make much of an impression here. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't get time to. It's a 2.5-minute match. It's like, you can tell the first minute is kind of like, okay, kid, do whatever you can. And then Dragon just kind of kills him for the second half, finishes him off quick, end of the match.
I thought you were gonna say, for those of you who don't know who Biohazard is, we don't either. But from his entrance, he sort of reminded me of like Bane a little bit. He had that thing on his face. I just don't know if when he talked, it sounded like he was speaking through a muffled loudspeaker. Um, the only two observations I really have about this are, one, they before all the first round matches, they show little preview videos of like each match, like almost like video packages. But there was no history between these two, and literally the only footage they had of Biohazard was from this match.
Yeah,
So they showed footage of these entrances and the match, immediately followed by his entrance and the match.
I noticed that too.
Yeah,
That was so funny. And also, they all the clips they showed for Dragon were from the Spanky match he lost on the last show, and I thought, well, maybe they were just pulling stuff quick from the last show only for these highlights. But no, like other guys get more varied highlights, but for some reason Dragon, all his highlights are from the one match he had with Spanky on the last show.
it is. I mean, it's just lazy, but whatever. It doesn't really matter, I
Yeah.
guess. But and then the other funny thing was, I forget who did it, but somebody did one of those, like, I think it was Biohazard, did one of those like Kurt Hennig style like neck snaps where the other guy is sitting on the mat, sitting up, and he snaps the neck. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And Donnie B referred to it as a snap suplex of the neck.
Oh my god. It starts already.
It
It
does.
starts already,
You
man.
got to keep track of that Donnie B stuff. We're gonna try to not talk about him quite as much, but certain
There
points you
will be
just,
some.
yeah, certain points you just can't avoid it.
I would actually point that the announcers at the end of this match, I think it was Donnie B, they start talking about, um, right when Biohazard loses, I think Donnie B goes into like, his school will be proud of him. He did great tonight, and he'll be back in Ring of Honor. He just lost a 2.5 minute match,
I did like nothing.
and yeah, I mean, and to go back to what Matt said earlier, Biohazard comes out wearing like a mask that covers just the bottom half of his face. It has little tiny green LED lights in it, and he has these weird, very tiny, very spaced out, kind of half bleached blonde braids. It's worth searching out if you can find a JPEG of this character, because it was a very, I mean, that's the most memorable thing he gets to do, is just simply exist in front of the camera for the show.
Agreed.
And so next we're going to go to a match that might be a tiny bit better. I don't want to give away my impression, but that would be Spanky taking on Paul London in the first round of the tournament. And Spanky would beat Paul London here in 9:58 after the sliced bread number 2. Matt, what did you think about this?
I thought it was pretty good. They looked good. Doing the basic wrestling early. London did some arm bars and head scissors, and one thing I noticed pretty early was Spanky is wearing tights in this match, which I think he must have learned his lesson from the previous match where he got those pants that ripped from Goodwill or whatever. And I noticed he was also doing a little bit less nonsense than he'd been doing in the other shows, just less like preening and dancing and stuff. He just like wrestled, which I thought helped a lot. Um, Spanky did a pretty intense drop kick to London's head while London was on the mat. They did like a forearm exchange, and you could see Rudy Boy, kind of encouraging Paul London. So I guess they kind of de facto made London the baby face in this match. London did a really good super kick, which led to a double count out spot in the middle of the ring. And then by then, at that point, the crowd is really into it. London misses the shooting star press. Spanky goes for sliced bread too, but London crotches him and hits a springboard enziguri. Springboard lion salt by London for 2. And then, like, at this point, the match is really good. And then they get to the finish, and there's some botches, which I think takes it down a few pegs. There's a superplex spot that's pretty badly botched, and both guys fall to the ground. Spanky goes for 2. Another botched suplex by Spanky, which, again, 2 in a row makes it even worse. I've noticed something with Spanky at this point, which is when he gets off his game, he really, really, really gets off his game. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed too, but and then he goes up to the top, but London crotches him, but Spanky hits the sliced bread for the win. So I thought it was really good and exciting, and then it fell apart.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I kind of forgive them for. I'm a bit easier on them for that because it's strange because this match only went 10 minutes, but I actually feel like they almost went too long because I was almost starting to check out around 8 or 9 minutes. I was like, I really like this match, and you've done enough. Like you're good, and it felt like the crowd maybe started to dip just a tiny bit, although they popped big when it was over because they were appreciating things. But yeah, then all of a sudden the botches happen. But I thought this was a pretty, I would say like high good, like not quite very good, but I would say this is pretty darn good match. And it's interesting to think this was Paul London's third Ring of Honor show, and technically his fourth match. And this is the first time he's really gotten to show, what he can do. It's only 10 minutes, but that's a reasonable amount of time. But when you consider that his first match was against Chris Marvel and at a round robin challenge, and that goes a couple minutes because Chris Marvel accidentally, breaks his ankle. And then his second match is part of that gauntlet on Night of Appreciation, and it's against, I think, John Hope, and we see four moves in a highlight video. And then his third match is against Michael Shane for like 5 or 6 minutes, and it's fine. So it's weird to think that Paul London, like, this is his first opportunity to actually impress, and I think he really does here. I think he seems exciting. Like, even at this point, kind of revisiting him, I kind of like that he's got some good flying. He does a great Tope Con Hilo here that Donnie B calls a sunset flip thingamajiggy. And I think he has good babyface fire when he's like shooting off forearms and stuff. Like he's a guy who's good at flying, but even when you see him do other things, they're all done well enough that he's not really being typecast as a high flyer to me. And
No, he's a biatch. He's a high flyer, and he's a biatch.
he's a biatch and a high flyer.
Call
And
back, call back. You have to listen to the last episode to know what we're talking about.
Well, when we get to episode 4, we're just old enough where we can start layering in things like that, references, and start really disenfranchising new listeners.
Exactly.
But I thought also you could tell, I don't know how much these two worked together in TWA, if they did at all, but it definitely seemed like they had really good chemistry until the botches. I think it was a lot of really fast, kind of fun exchanges at the start, but they didn't get to the point of feeling choreographed to me, which I liked. So again, I think this is the first time that Paul London really gets to show off. It's another good match for Spanky, and yeah, it would have been better without the botches, but still, 10 minutes for the second match on the show. I'm more than happy with this.
Yeah, it was good. I will say, I think London looked impressive. I think London still looks like his stuff from this point still looks really good. Like I think he was a really good wrestler pretty early on in his career. Spanky, I thought this was the first time he actually got to look really good. Like he always looked, good compared to some of the other guys on the show, as I've mentioned, but I don't know. There's something missing from him for me during this time period. He doesn't impress me that much compared to, the other top guys. Because, he was considered one of the top guys on the indies at the time. And I don't know. I just feel like he was, like I said, when he gets off his game, he just gets really off his game. And I don't see him performing in ROH at the high level thus far that guys like Dragon and Low Key and even London do on a regular basis. I don't know how you feel about him at this point.
That's a great point, because actually one thing I was kind of writing in my notes to myself was that Paul London has something that Spanky is missing, where there's an excitement when you watch Paul London here where I want to see what Paul London does next in Ring of Honor, even though I've already seen it. But like, I get that excitement. And with Spanky, I don't leave dissatisfied, but generally in his performances so far, I don't leave hungry to see the next Spanky match. I'm not going like, I can't wait for Spanky against this guy or this guy. He almost seems like he's not mailing it in, but he's a very professional, talented guy. But it's not going to be too often where he just absolutely blows you away. At least at this point in his career, it felt like.
Right. I mean, he certainly improves. But yeah, I mean, I guess I watch him and I see that he's good, but I don't necessarily see him being on the level of a lot of the other better guys. He does have a lot of charisma, though. I will say that.
Yeah, and maybe our feelings towards him right now are more pronounced because watching these early Ring of Honor shows, it's so obvious that Gabe and them really, all the people behind Ring of Honor, obviously really were thinking this guy was going to be a big major player, and they were giving him a lot of screen time backstage compared to some other guys. And at this point, a big long winning streak compared to everyone else. I mean, he still hasn't lost at this point. And so when someone gets that much of a push, I guess you do also kind of expect a little more.
Right, exactly.
So we go. One nice thing about the show is not a ton of segments at certain points because they have so many matches to squeeze in. So we're going right to the third in the first round match of the ROH title tournament, and that would be Jay Briscoe versus Doug Williams. And Doug Williams defeats Jay Briscoe here in 6:17 by pinfall after his Chaos Theory suplex. And this was a match where I felt like both guys were just getting through it to move on to other things. That the focus of the match wasn't really the match because there's two things that are going on here. The first thing is midway through the match, Mark Briscoe comes to ringside. And at that point, all the commentators can talk about largely is Mark Briscoe. The cameras are focusing on Mark Briscoe to the point where the guy with like the mobile handheld camera at ringside walks right in Mark Briscoe's face, and then for like the next minute of the match, every 20 seconds or so, we'll see him turn and stick his little camera right in Mark Briscoe's face, and then someone doing the editing will press the button to transition from hard camera to handheld camera, and we'll get an intense close-up of Mark Briscoe going, "Come on, Jay." So it becomes pretty distracting in that point from focusing on the match, at least for me. And then the other part of it was them kind of introducing us to Doug Williams. And Steve Corino, particularly here, really goes in on UK wrestling. And I realized that UK wrestling was not the vibrant scene it is today, where you could argue that the United Kingdom has the hottest wrestling scene possibly in the world right now. But Steve Corino during this match is talking about how UK wrestling is pretty much god awful, and saying he outright says it's inferior to the US and Japanese scenes, which is kind of a weird touch when this is the show where you're bringing in three guys from the UK and you're just kind of burying the scene they're coming from. And then Steve says the Ring of Honor title is one of the most prestigious titles out there, and that Doug winning it would not only make him one of the UK's biggest stars, but it would also bring wrestling credibility to the United Kingdom. And bear in mind, at this point, the Ring of Honor title doesn't even technically exist yet. So it just all this stuff on the commentary made it hard for me to focus on the match. But as for the match, it's 6 minutes. Jay gets to hit a few of his big moves. I really still continue to like his top rope leg drop. Doug Williams gets to exhibit a tiny bit of his chain wrestling and gets to, show off some of the stuff he can do. And it's not horrible, but it just feels like, Williams is saving himself, for the next match. He's got Jay's, all the focus is just on that his feud with Mark is continuing. And it seems like what's actually happening in this match is kind of the least important thing going on.
Yeah, I would say I like this a decent amount more than you did. I don't think it was a particularly good match, but I thought, it was the introduction of Doug Williams, and I thought he looked so good. Like, I mean, I don't mean physically, although that, I'm sure he looks great also that way, but like his wrestling, like he looked like a different class of wrestler than even a lot of the guys on this show. Even a lot of the better ROH guys. And I thought Jay looked really determined because he was actually getting to wrestle like a real good wrestler for once on one of these shows, as opposed to another kind of, inexperienced indie level guy. I do think that at this point Jay just hadn't developed enough good, like, normal offense. It was just everything he did pretty much was, either mat wrestling or a really big move, and I don't think you could really make a good match that way. But like I said, Williams looked great. The crowd went nuts for the chaos theory. I agree with you about Carino being weirdly negative about UK wrestling. I forget if it was this match or the other match, but he was talking about how Williams is great, and he didn't get great by watching tapes of UK wrestling. He got great by watching the Americans,
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. And he also says at one point when talking about the Briscoes feuding, he says, "Great wrestling families don't air their dirty laundry in public." And I was like, that's one of the least true things I've ever heard anyone say. Um, but I thought I thought it was a good display for Doug Williams. I thought he was really impressive immediately.
I didn't think things were bad. I think for me the commentary was taking me out of the match, and obviously it's only 6 minutes, and I think the main goal of this match was, like you said, to show off Doug Williams. I think obviously one thing you notice about Doug Williams right off the bat is he has a really good physique for the indies. Even now he would he's very packed with muscle and thick definition. And as for you talking about how good Doug Williams looks, I have actually a few little quotes from the Observer at the time that I'm going to sprinkle in, just little opinions from Dave's live reports and from personally watching the show. And he actually would heartily agree with you on Doug Williams, because Dave at the time said Doug Williams, who has to be the most underrated wrestler in the world, has improved noticeably since the last time I have seen him, which was on the English Bravo special against Eddie Guerrero. I really can't see why Williams isn't a regular in either WWE or one of the Japan groups, because he's not a junior heavyweight, but has excellent skills. I can sort of see WWE in that he doesn't look glamorous, and his excellent mat wrestling wouldn't work since there isn't a lot of mat wrestling in the WWE product. But he'd be a great mid-card foreigner who fans would take to once they see him in any of the major Japanese groups. And so, Dave qualifies a lot of his indie praise, I noticed at this time, for indie workers, but that's about as glowing as an endorsement, outright calling him the most underrated wrestler in the world.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, he still had to throw in that he wouldn't be able to get over in WWE because of his style of wrestling, but he doesn't say it quite as harshly as he does for a lot of other guys. And by the way, Dave continued to do that stuff for like another 10 years, basically, when he would talk about indie guys.
Yeah, I can tell that's going to be a big bugaboo for you. And it is a bit to me, but I also kind of like that it shows kind of how the mindset has changed about things.
But I still think he was wrong then also. That's all I'm saying.
And obviously things somewhat did change from what Dave was making with these comments, but also Dave didn't really see that things would change.
Right.
Guys that he kind of wrote off to some degree actually did overachieve. But to be fair, some of these guys are guys that I kind of wrote off, even though I loved them. I never thought, for example, that Bryan Danielson would get as far as he did in my wildest dreams, and I love that he did.
Yeah, I never thought he would get that far. That's true. I did think that he could be a top heel when he came in. I definitely thought that. My biggest pet peeve, I might have mentioned this on another one of the shows, is just when Dave says that a guy can't get over because of the style he works. And I'm just like, but if someone's good, they can adapt to another style. Like, just like the idea that somebody can only do one thing, just it drives me nuts. Like that's the thing that bugs me.
Or also, sometimes if a guy's really good at a new style, it can get over in a new place. Like, generally, things people haven't seen before, unless they're really flashy, high-flying, don't get over until they see it for a while first.
Right, exactly.
Rome isn't built in a day. So, yeah, there's some Dave stuff like that, but still, again, it's nice to see Doug Williams here, and we'll continue to see him in Ring of Honor. And I'm just saying, I don't think there's anything else here. We're going to the next match, which is another first-round match, as a lot of these are going to be. It's a 16-man tournament, and that would be Johnny Storm versus Jody Fleisch, two more UK guys. And Jody Fleisch beats Johnny Storm here in 7 minutes, 1 second by pinfall after hitting a power bomb, kind of countering a Johnny Storm move. Matt, how did you feel about this match?
How long did you say it was?
7 minutes, 1 second.
It felt even a little shorter than that, but I wasn't crazy about this. First of all, early on they mentioned that, or I think it was Carino, that Storm and Fleisch have wrestled 150 times. And I don't think it was good enough considering that. They botched so much stuff. They tried a lot of stuff, a lot of flips. They botched a backdrop and then redid it, which is an annoying thing when somebody botches something, when they just go right back to it. They have some cool stuff. Fleisch hits a springboard shooting star press. but it's just really sloppy. And I thought like that took the crowd out of it a little bit also. I'll say that Fleisch looked a lot better than Storm. I don't know if you would agree with me
Yes.
with that. And does Storm come back to ROH? A little bit, right? He's there like.
I'm not sure. I mean, I know for a fact Jody Fleisch is going. We're going to see him some more in Ring of Honor. I am not sure about Storm.
Yeah. So Storm hits what Donnie B calls a quote rewind Frankensteiner. And then he goes for a second one, but Fleisch catches him in a power bomb and gets the win. And there's a "Please come back" chant, but I don't know. I thought this match was kind of a mess.
Ooh, see, this is good because I felt like we agree. I'm never going to force anything on these shows about agreement or dissension, but we have agreed a lot, and this is something I would say fairly disagree with you. I like this. I thought there were some botches. The botches for some reason didn't bother me that much, and I think what I liked about this was they didn't get a ton of time. Like most of these first round matches aren't going to get much time. They got 7 minutes, and even with the botches, even how choreographed it was, even though there was almost zero psychology or selling or anything, you could tell they were going all out. They were trying their hardest to impress these fans, and I was impressed with. There were still moves, even 15 years later, that I thought were kind of big wow things. I think even in 2002, a springboard shooting star press, that's a huge deal. Even now, I still think that's a really cool dive. Stuff like his kind of springboard 720 DDT, I think all that stuff's really cool. And I guess why I'm impressed with that stuff holding up is because of all wrestling, the stuff that ages the quickest and holds up the worst are matches like this, which are just built around kind of flash and dazzle, that aren't anything really story based, no psychology, no selling, no character really. It's just crazy spots. And I realize it's only been 15 years, but kind of after seeing all the Whipwreck student matches on these first Ring of Honor shows, I feel like these guys did the car wreck crazy spot fest still with all the botches that make it a car wreck, but they gave me what I think Gabe was hoping those matches would produce, but didn't. This gave me it. There was parts of it that weren't good at all, but it at least impressed me on that kind of visceral level of it's fast. I'm seeing guys do crazy things. They're not hitting everything.
Yeah, I know. I just thought there were too many botches. I just wasn't feeling it. I mean, I appreciate that they were working really hard, but I just don't think that they executed the way they wanted to. That's
Yeah,
that's just how it appeared to me.
there were some major botches, and you brought up the biggest one, which is they botch a backdrop. But there's another one they botch. Not I don't know if you would call it an outright botch, but there's a sequence where Fleisch and Storm are trading pinning combinations, which is common for these kind of matches.
They've had
And
a
at
lot
one
of those on this show, actually.
Yeah, and at one point, Fleisch has Storm in a pinning combination, but Storm's shoulder isn't quite down. It's in the middle of them trading like 10 pin attempts, different roll-ups and stuff. And the ref treats it as a real deal, as a shoot, so to speak, where he won't count it until that shoulder's down. And Fleisch kind of barely moves Storm, and you can look at him just pleading in his eyes for the ref, like, please just count this because we want to get to the next 8 like pin attempts we have. And to me, that and the backdrop spot where they just immediately repeated it, it definitely showed that this was the kind of match where these guys had move 1 to 87 plotted out probably. And if move 47 or something like didn't work, they were screwed. They were going to keep doing move 46 or 47 until it worked, because otherwise they weren't going to get to move 48. Like it was just even little deviations like that. The fact that like they couldn't just improvise, it kind of did show where they were probably at as workers at that point.
Yeah,
I
that's a good observation. I I'm like I have the philosophy, and I know probably a lot of people disagree with me, but I don't agree with the whole thing where refs try to like do it like it's legitimate. I think refs should just go along with what the wrestlers want the match to be, and if they count a pin and it's a little suspect, like okay, it's the wrestler's fault, but just do it anyway because it makes the match work better. That's sort of how I feel. I don't know about you, but
well, yeah, I agree, because especially with with referees, like the referees are not infallible in real sports. So even if they make something where you or I would look and go, "Oh, he counted on that and his shoulder wasn't quite down." Well, referees in real sports miss calls all the time in the middle of action. So, it seems like this idea where in this fake sport where so many crazy things happen that the ref has to treat it like an absolute real thing to the point of even like none of us would have noticed if he had just counted that pin attempt as real. Like that, the fact that Johnny Storm's shoulder was an inch off the mat, but it disrupted their whole segment. But I still thought the way Fleisch reacted to it was pretty funny. Something you wanted to say?
Well, I also have a controversial viewpoint as far as referees, which is, I know a lot of people will disagree with this one. I could care less about the legal man in tag matches. Like, just make the match exciting. I don't even pay attention to who the legal man is. I don't really think it's that important that the rules seem perfectly followed. But I guess we can get to that when we see some tag matches, because I'm sure there are plenty of tag matches in ROH where that will be a thing.
Matt, do you hate referees?
No. I love referees, which is why I think that we should stop forcing them to do all these annoying things as if they're actually officiating a real contest. They're actors pretending to be referees. Right? Isn't that what they're doing?
I don't know why that's funny, but it is. I like that. Did you like that almost exasperated? Like, do you know what they're doing? But I guess one more thing we should get to before we move on from this match. A piece of background I thought was interesting was Steve Corino at one point says that Fleisch and Storm have wrestled each other 150 times at this point. I don't know if that's true, but I do know they had wrestled each other a lot, and they were kind of a touring match. And in fact, this was near the end of a little mini U.S. tour Fleisch and Storm took, and they had worked in NECW and CZW and worked each other in those indies during the same kind of 2-week period. And apparently from live reports at the time, both of those matches were better and less botchy than this match. In fact, the CCW match was during their Best of the Best tournament, and although Fleisch and Storm, neither of them won the tournament, I guess they gave out awards for best individual wrestler in the tournament and best match, and Fleisch won for best wrestler, and Storm and Fleisch won together for best match.
Well, you know why that is. Because they put on their best foot forward because they knew that was only one tournament, and this was just one of 4 tournaments. So they knew that they had plenty of other people that could take the mantle from them.
Yeah, they could really lay on the brake a bit, pump the brakes on this. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's a bit interesting is there might be another reason for some of the botches, because in the Observer from the time, Dave notes, Fleisch versus Johnny Storm, this is him judging from live reports, wasn't as good as from responses as some of their previous matches were on the tour, as they missed a few spots but also did some spectacular moves. Fleisch, Storm, Sumi Sakai, and Doug Williams barely made the show after being caught in horrible traffic, which made their drive from Boston take something like 9 hours.
Holy fuck.
And that may have accounted for Fleisch and Storm being a little rusty.
Oh my God.
So that's one thing to think when you think about Storm and Fleisch and Williams, is apparently they had like the drive from hell just to get here to Philly for the show.
Oh, that's very boy. That's just painful to hear. 9 hours going from Boston to oh my God.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you nightmares tonight. But so that was that, and now we actually do get a little backstage segment. It's a little attempt at comedy. It's Jerry Lynn's backstage, and apparently he had just eaten a banana because the Christopher Street Connection now want to see him eat another banana. Lynn says he's not really hungry, but he's going to oblige them anyway and eat a second banana when Prince Nana walks in. And so, of course, the Christopher Street Connection, being the Christopher Street Connection, start commenting on his scepter. Wink. At which point, Lynn gives like the most weak-willed help, and just walks out of the room. And then the Christopher Street Connection do a bit more of their Christopher Street shtick. But what I loved about this was, so Lynn leaves, he walks through the open door down the hallway holding the second banana he was about to eat. And then, as the Christopher Street Connection are doing their skit, you can see Jerry Lynn walk back in the other direction seconds later, kind of peer in and realize, oh, the segment's still going on, and he's eating the banana, and then he keeps walking in the other direction. And I thought that was just a really cute kind of indie thing.
Well, also that's fun because that particular scene is Jerry Lynn's Ring of Honor debut, so so that's worth noting.
That is your first exposure in Ring of Honor to Jerry Lynn.
Exactly. If you've never seen Jerry Lynn before, except for this tape,
future Ring of Honor champion Jerry Lynn eating bananas in his opening segment.
As far as homophobic wrestling angles go, I feel like this one was pretty acceptable, mostly because you had Jerry Lynn basically having fun with it instead of being horribly angry that he's in the presence of two gay men. So I'm mostly okay with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the reaction. I mean, it was very kind of like Jerry Lynn in a couple of the segments we're going to see tonight comes off as a very kind of low key, chill, kind of amiable man, and he does not, even when he leaves, he does not react with disgust or any urgency. It's just like, okay, this is getting weird. Gonna go eat my banana in the hallway. I mean, it's nothing. It's nothing compared to what we've seen for the last 3 shows.
Yeah. Now, like, and when it comes to this kind of stuff, like, to call out a wrestling promotion for homophobia or misogyny or racism or whatever, you're being pretty selective because every wrestling promotion ever has been guilty of that for years, unfortunately. And I guess all of us listening to this have decided that we can look past it enough to keep watching. So, but the issue with ROH was that the violent anger with which they presented their homophobia is what I think made it much more egregious than even the normal level. I mean, it's always bad, but like I said, we let it slide so many other times, but this was just over the top. What happened in this segment that we just talked about, this is more in the realm of like normal, like, all right, well, it's wrestling kind of stuff.
Yeah, we can argue about how damaging it is to just have very over the top kind of extreme case stereotypes of different things are, which obviously the Christopher Street Connection are, but at least in segments like this, it doesn't feel like the joke is on them and that a bunch of vitriol is being aimed at them.
Vitriol is especially the part that made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I like going to what you said. I agree, because at this point, it's almost like they've done so much. I can settle just for the stereotype. Like, okay, it's just a crazy stereotype. It's not like gay bashing. Okay, like you've beaten me down enough where I'm not even going to question this now. Like, good.
Right.
So, and that's how society decays, kids. But,
exactly. I will comment on the show at this point. Up to this point in the show, to me, it felt like the first ROH show that actually felt kind of like a proper wrestling show. Like where, like from early on, there are a bunch of matches where the guys are trying and have a chance to have a good match, and there are stakes. I think the undercard on a lot of the other shows just felt like a bunch of like really meaningless indie matches that didn't mean anything or didn't feel developed in any way. And it's not like there have been great matches so far in this show, and there have been a couple of quick ones, but it just felt more substantial so far. And I think that's a big turn for ROH. Just the fact that they're putting on an undercard with substance.
I agree, and also again, by having so many of these matches on the show, they have to cut out a lot of the segments, so things just flow faster. I mean, so many, even in this review, I keep having to like almost pinch myself because as I look at my notes, I'm like, oh, there isn't another crazy segment. It's just another match following a match. Like, oh boy.
Exactly.
So, and we get something that's a mixture of crazy segment and match here, which is Low Key versus Prince Nana, another first-round match in the Ring of Honor title tournament. And Low Key beats Prince Nana at 3:53 after a knockout. And this match, it's almost not a match in a weird way. It's Nana attacks Low Key before the opening bell. he dominates low key the whole match, and you would think that would be interesting because that's such a role reversal. You know, we're not used to Key being kind of that vulnerable. And the problem is Nana's offense is super, super pedestrian. He does mostly just a bunch of repetitive clubbering in the corner. I know Nana was wrestling longer matches in other places like I think JPW or somewhere at this time. But here it's a barely 4-minute match, and it feels like he doesn't even have enough offense to fill 4 minutes.
He did a bunch of butt splashes.
Yeah,
at least 3 of them.
I think he hit 3 and missed his 4th. I will say, I think he has one of the best butt splashes in wrestling. I thought that was the highlight of his offense because they actually look like they're coming in pretty hard. But we get about, almost all of this being Nana dominating, and then Low-Ki fires back with some chops. He hits one big kick to the head, and the ref sells this, and Nana sells this, like Nana is knocked out cold. And we get a few minutes then of people rushing the ring. I think Gabe, Rob Sapolsky, Rob Feinstein,
Rudy Boy is out there.
Rudy Boy. So, and they're really trying. Elax, who was Nana's kind of a ring boy coming with him to the ring for the match, rushes in. And they really try to sell this as a knockout. Carino kind of treats this like a scary thing. And I don't know I tried researching this. I don't know for a fact or not if this was a real knockout or not. I know reading in the newsletters at the time, Dave treated this like it was an angle. I know people who have watched I think the Death Valley Drivers guys, I think in their review, they kind of treated it like an angle. I'm of the mind to treat it like an angle because Elax is doing this comical fanning of Nana the whole time, which I think you wouldn't do if a guy was legit concussed and knocked out and, everybody else was really being serious attending to him. But it could have been a real knockout, but I don't think it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't just based. I think that would have been known sooner, because especially since Sapolsky talked to Meltzer at the time.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything you have to say about this? I mean, it's
not really. I thought it was fairly good booking. I actually think it was well done. Just that, first of all, to have Low-Ki dominated by Nana of all people, I think that is a good role reversal, even if Nana couldn't quite pull it off in an interesting way. And then the whole Key knocking him out thing, I don't know. I think that's good booking. I think it makes just for something different. They weren't going to have a great match. So just do something different and cool, and I think it got over. So I give it a thumbs up, assuming he didn't really get hurt.
I would give the segment a thumbs down just because of how repetitive it was, and also because the point of the segment was to get Low-Ki, I guess, over as a killer, which to me is something you did not need to do. Like, he already was. But I'll say I can recognize when I'm completely wrong about something, like my opinion is off the beaten path, because when Low-Ki comes out for his second match, the first thing you hear the crowd chanting is, "You killed Nana." So obviously it made an impression on them and accomplished what they were setting out to do.
Yeah, like I said, what would have been the better alternative for them to have a match? Doesn't seem like it. So
yeah, I just don't know if Nana versus Low-Ki is something I wanted to see in the first place. But we go to the next backstage segment where we're seeing Jerry Lynn again. He's rocking the headphones, and Xavier comes by and he refers to Jerry Lynn as Jerry Lynn, which I thought was kind of cute in a very too prim and proper way. And he welcomes him to the Ring of Honors with an S at the end. And Xavier,
I don't know why I find that so funny.
I'm gonna miss when people start getting Ring of Honor right. Like, I love all these little variations we're seeing.
Yeah.
But Xavier wants to know what music Lynn is rocking, and Lynn's like very amiable, mellow, like, hey, give it a try. Hands him the headphones, and then Xavier's like, liking it, and Xavier asks Lynn, "Is it available at Walmart?" And Jerry Lynn's kind of like miffed, like, "What?" And he's like, and then he goes, "Try relapse.com." And I looked it up. Relapse.com is still a thing in 2017 for people who want to check it out. And if you want to hear Jerry Lynn's some of his favorite death metal, whatever. I wrote here on Jerry Lynn. Even when Jerry Lynn is doing oddly placed ads for music sites, he still comes off as a chill, likable guy.
Now, do you think Jerry Lynn just had buddies who ran that record label, or had some sort of promotional deal with them, or what?
I think he was like, Gabe, let me tell you something. You can take $100 off the booking price. You let me do a 1-minute segment where I plug relapse.com.
Yeah, I really do wonder if he had some sort of stake in that company or not. I'm just very curious now. But it obviously worked, because here we are plugging it 15 years later. That's sneaky Jerry Lynn. He just knows how to promote.
This is like the most valuable bond where it just slowly pays dividends over there's going to be 20 years from now a podcast about this podcast, and they're going to mention our segment about relapse.com, which will give them a third plug. So
That is a dystopian future, my friend.
If that's the worst thing that happens in 20 years, we're doing pretty good.
It's true.
But then we get another brief little segment where the SAT and Divine Storm wish Red luck. And I like that they do kind of acknowledge that the SAT and Red were kind of getting into disagreements for the last couple shows, because the SAT say, hey, basically let bygones be bygones, and they tell Red he'll always be SAT. So I thought, aw. But it was just, again, one of those classic kind of early Ring of Honor segments that's literally probably 20, 30 seconds. And it's just there to kind of give a little bit of connective tissue to things.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, yeah, this was fine, I guess. Nothing much to it.
I just had to archive it because this is going to be the one archival document of Ring of Honor after all video media is destroyed in the Great Plague of 2019.
Yes.
So we'll archive the match that comes next, which is the Amazing Red taking on Xavier in a Ring of Honor title tournament first round match. The Amazing Red here wins in 420 by pinfall after a shooting star press. And I think I went last. So, Matt, did you have any I'm putting you in the position again of how many thoughts do you have about a match that went 4 minutes, 20 seconds?
Okay, well, I'm going to my notes because I think of all the matches on the show, I remember this one the least. So Xavier catches Red on a corkscrew, dive, and hits a power bomb, so that was cool. Red Ronics Xavier, who turns it into I guess sort of like a headstand springboard kick. I'd say Xavier looks better in spot fest type matches than he does in wrestling matches. I think that was one observation that I had, because I thought this was probably the best that he looked.
I agree. I wrote that too, like word for word. This is the best, in my opinion, that Xavier's looked in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I definitely think so. There's a lot of moves in this 4 minutes and 20 seconds. There's literally no selling, but I guess that's just kind of what you expect. Red kicks out of the Kiss Your Ex Goodbye head drop thing, and he misses. Xavier misses a 450. Red does like a rope walk, flipping DDT for 2, and he wins with a spin kick, infrared and standing shooting star press. And there was no psychology or selling at all, but it was entertaining and less sloppy than most Red matches so far. So I think it was fine. It was. I thought it was solidly entertaining, and in my opinion, less distractingly botchy than the Jody Fleisch match.
It was definitely even more compact. And I mean, I like Spot Fest. It's not always my favorite kind of wrestling, but I really do like a good one.
When it's good, I mean, it's just fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and for a match like this, I don't blame anyone if they get 4 minutes of going this route. I mean, how much else can you do? So I thought Xavier, when he's just throwing big moves, he looked about as good as he ever has. He countered, I think, like a Red Rana attempt or something into a huge power bomb where he really dropped Red, looked really good. But, of course, Red's really easy to pick up, especially when you have the physique of an Xavier. But yeah, I thought this was the best Xavier's looked, and ironically, he loses this match. I thought Red looked like he wouldn't have been fun to wrestle in this match because he really kind of crushes Xavier on a dive to the outside and talks to him for a good 5 seconds. And whenever he does the big infrared, like, twisting splash, I would say over half the time he lands really hard on the guy's legs because he can. It's like he can do these crazy flips, but he can't really then control where he lands because it's
Yeah.
so hard. And it's one of those guys where I look at him, I go, ooh, if I was wrestling, you'd be one of the guys I would least want to wrestle in some cases. And one thing that I thought was a bit funny was, well, actually a couple things. The first was when Red walks through the curtain, people who have the show, because I know some people have said they're watching along, if you missed this the first time, go back and tell me if I'm right about this. Red walks through the curtain and he has like a drink of water and he does like the kind of I'm going to take a sip and spit in the air kind of thing. But Red makes the rookie mistake of spitting the water in the air and immediately walking into the water so it gets all over his face and he has to wipe it off as he's walking walking down the ramp. I mean, walking down the entranceway. So I wrote there.
So Red doesn't even have aim when it comes to his spitting spots.
I wrote a rookie mistake there, my friend. And I thought the other thing that was funny was Red has this weird kind of hand gesture where he kind of puts his hands up. And it's hard to describe, like a weird double hand gesture that he was trying to make a kind of a signature thing. I guess since we're only very shortly removed from the Diamond Cutter, signature hand gestures in wrestling were more of a thing because he was trying to do one. And Xavier always does the kind of goofy, just cross his arms and an X above his head thing. And I thought what was cute was at the end of the match, Red actually wins. It's kind of like Xavier might have kicked out at 2.9, but Xavier's a good sport and, congratulates Red anyway. And then they both do their signature hand gestures to each other as like a show of respect. And I laughed out loud watching that because it was so goofy, but yet I loved it. And the one other thing I got to mention here, trying to sprinkle, sparingly these Donnie B gems, but there was one where Red does some high flying move, and Donnie he calls it one of those flippy doodah things I don't know how to really pronounce correctly. And at this point, I almost like yelled at my screen, "You're the announcer, you're the play-by-play guy," and you're almost like bragging. Like the number of times during these shows that Donnie mentions, "I don't know what that's called," like almost boastfully. Like, what kind of person named Don would like boast about things they don't know? I don't get it.
Like I said, he's very presidential.
But I mean, I guess there's not much else to say about a 420-minute match. And
Because you forgot it because you were partaking in a burrito.
Yes, the most special of burritos. Gonna save half of it for later. I don't smoke weed. Don't do it, kids.
No, we just established you eat it in burritos.
I'm more likely to smoke a ham, but eat healthy too, kids. I'm full of warnings right now. Anyway, we get a segment next. This is falling apart where the camera follows Xavier backstage, and Christopher Daniels is waiting, and he's mad. And he's mad at Xavier because he expected him to make it to the second round to take out Low Key for him. And then Daniels gets in Red's face and really yells at him that Red, you better beat Low Key. And Red kind of shies away like he's a scared kid, which I thought was kind of cute and a kind of an interesting choice. He doesn't stand up to him. And Xavier then tells Daniels to pick on someone his own size. So seeds again possibly being planted for something that may happen in a few Ring of Honor shows coming from now. Wink, wink.
Yeah, spoiler alert, they're planning for the thing that's definitely happening in a couple of shows.
Yes, and I do think it is cool that they're planting little seeds like this, and it's another little segment. And then we get one more before the next match where NECW promoter Sheldon Goldberg interrupts a Scoot Andrews backstage photo shoot to introduce him to Sumi Sakai, who is a Japanese women's wrestler. And it is the most awkward segment where it's like, "I'd like you to meet Sumi Sakai." And Scoot Andrews reacts like you would react if someone was introducing you to somebody you had no idea who they were and didn't care who they were.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, how did they decide to put this on the tape? It's like shooting it, okay, you have an idea, and it just clearly goes badly, and then they just are like, all right, well, that's fine, whatever. Yeah, it's just literally the entire segment is Scoot Andrews standing there. I guess someone's taking pictures of him posing, which is also, I think, a little bit weird. But Sheldon Goldberg comes over and is like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to Sumi Sakai," and they just stand there and look around awkwardly. It's really all it is. It's really all it is. And
There's actually quite a few laughs on this show.
yeah, but this one is definitely not intentionally funny.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine any of the people involved, whether it's, I guess probably Gabe, who's, behind the scenes, and the camera person, and the wrestlers, and Sheldon Goldberg. And no one's like, okay, what's supposed to be happening here? Like, is this just supposed to be a slice of life where we show what an awkward silence is like? Because it's just so random.
Yeah, just completely. I mean, it's building to a segment that's going to come very quickly, but it's something you really don't even need to build to.
Even with this, that segment doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, like why? Like,
we'll get
was
to
Sheldon
that, but
Goldberg doing this to everybody backstage? Like, Frank Talent, I'd like you to meet Sumi Sakai.
Yeah.
Low key, quit growling for a second. I'd like to introduce you to Sumi Sakai from the Jade promotion.
I actually think if they had shown that would have made this make a little more sense.
Just a montage with a different star wipe every time.
Yeah, exactly. Because of all the stars.
The next match in the first round of the Ring of Honor title tournament, it was Christopher Daniels defeating Scoot Andrews by pinfall in 2 minutes 28 seconds after a double jump moonsault. This was the shortest match of the first round and of the night. And before the match, Daniels gets on the house mic and says his goal is to destroy Ring of Honor. And what I thought was funny about this was Christopher Daniels yet again got a really good face reaction coming out.
Yeah.
And even when he says he's going to destroy Ring of Honor, I would say at best the crowd split goes down to maybe 50-50. Like, they're so not buying into it and like him so much that even when he says, I want to kill the promotion you just are currently watching, half the fans are still like, yay, yeah, Christopher Daniels ruined this. And Carino has to kind of sell, the fans might like him, but the boys in the back hate him because he disrespects the code of honor.
As if anyone should care, right? Like,
yeah, on show 4. And again, it's always, this will be something that will happen quite a lot in wrestling in 2017, but the idea of commentators having to sell a guy as being a bad guy when the crowd is clearly cheering him, which, Ring of Honor, as always, ahead of their time. And then Christopher Daniels announces, this is the official announcement of the Prophecy, which would be the very first stable in Ring of Honor history. And he announces that the first member is Simply Luscious, which an interesting choice for your first member of your stable. And what I think is interesting that they don't really acknowledge here is on the last show, Simply Luscious in the backstage segment complains to Rob Feinstein about not having good enough stuff to do in a Ring of Honor. And on this show, she gets something better to do, which is be part of the Prophecy. So that begs the question, is Rob Feinstein the secret mastermind of the Prophecy? Is he the higher power to this?
Well, notice he goes away a few years later as soon as Daniels does. So.
Oh my God! Follow the money, Matt.
Yeah. Well, maybe Daniels and Feinstein are the same person. Well, no. Well, I will say, I think the thing is, like I said, in early ROH, it's almost impossible to be a heel unless you just suck. And Daniels, I think at this point in his career, this might be the most entertaining he ever was at any point that I've watched him. Well, and that includes TNA, that includes later ROH. I think his character is funny. He has good matches, and I don't know. I think he's performing at a really high level during this time. So, considering the type of audience that they're going for, it's hard to imagine people booing him.
Yeah, they're calling on him, to lean on him really heavy as kind of the one big heel, the guy who leads the first stable, and, the one guy that really can really do not only just a promo that has charisma in it, but they can get across kind of bullet points. And you can tell in these first shows, they're leaning on him heavily because of that, and he's coming through, Maybe he looks even better because he's doing things that no one else on the show at this point in these early shows can do. But I mean, he does come off, I agree, like better than I remembered, especially just about these little promos that I didn't maybe appreciate as much as I do now.
Yeah, I'd say one of the big surprises for me going back and watching these shows is like how strong of a claim Daniels has as being the MVP of that first year of ROH.
Yeah, I put him in my top 10. You didn't.
True.
Yeah. But as for the match, I mean, I would say this is about as good as a 2-minute, 28-second match can be. They tried to jam a bunch of action in there. There's not much to say other than it's a little surprising that Daniels wins clean as a sheet.
Yeah, I do want to throw in, because this is from the beginning, a really good Donnie B line.
I don't know what. I want you to hear you say it so I can know if it's mine or not.
He has a few good ones, but the one I say is, "Scoot is quick to scoot to the ring, no pun intended." I don't believe you, Donnie B.
Okay, that is not mine. Mine isn't as much funny as it's just aggravating, which was I forget what the exact line was. Oh wait, he did two things that were really dumb here. The first thing was he says that Christopher Daniels isn't well versed in submissions, when 2 Ring of Honor shows ago he made American Dragon tap out with a submission. So that's Donnie B Gem 1. But then the real Donnie B Gem to me was that about 15 seconds before the end of the match, Donnie says that Daniels is making a mistake looking past Scoot, like a fatal error. And literally, I would say like 10, 15 seconds later, Daniels like hits the best moonsault ever and wins clean. So, which made Donnie B look like a complete idiot.
Yeah, that's fine though.
Yeah. Oh, 2 more shows of him. But yeah, just not much to say.
Yeah,
quick match.
Nothing match really. Like,
yeah, it's interesting that they kind of built up Scoot calling Daniels a pedophile on the last show, and then he kind of loses completely clean in 2.5 minutes, like a bit like a chump. But that goes directly into a little post-match segment where Simply Luscious gets on the mic. I can't really make out everything she's saying, but she's calling down Scoot Andrews. She slaps him in the face and dares him to hit her. Now, at the time, Dave said from live reports that there was an Austin chant, I guess kind of referencing Austin's recent, at that time, domestic violence accusations. I didn't hear it, but Carino does something really creepy at this point where Simply Luscious is daring Scoot to hit her, and Carino's like, "This is every man's dream," which just was like a cringeworthy, creepy comment.
Yeah, so I was recently watching like very old, like very like late ECW, it might have been the second to last pay-per-view they ever did, and there was a Carino promo at the beginning where he was waiting for Dawn Marie to come to the promo. And like it was him and Jack Victory talking. This was when Carino was a face, mind you. And he goes to Jack Victory like, "Oh, where is Dawn Marie?" And he literally says, "I hate women." So there's a trend here on this quote character Steve Carino was playing at the time.
Well, judging from some things I've heard Carino refer, like the way Carino has talked about Simply Luscious, like post a relationship, maybe he was just kind of clairvoyant and talking about his own future thoughts. But Scoot here is about as much of a gentleman as you can be in this segment, saying that he would never hit a woman, but he knows someone who will. And he brings out his old friend, Sumi Sakai. And
so maybe that awkward silence was them communicating telepathically. Like, okay, so you're going to stand there and you're going to have my back if I call you out, right? Because I don't see anything that happened in that segment that would lead to any of this being possible.
I love Sumi comes out pandering with like a fresh, crisp red Phillies cap. So the classic easy pander of, "Hey, I like your sports team. Cheer for me, I'm the face," just letting you know through the power of hats. And we get Sumi Sakai taking on Simply Luscious in an impromptu match. So this is the first official women's match in Ring of Honor history, let it be known, is Sumi Sakai versus Simply Luscious. And Sumi Sakai beats Simply Luscious in 3:26 after a moonsault. Matt, what could you possibly have to say about this?
Well, I think the biggest thing to note is this is still, ROH's mission statement that we are not sports entertainment. We are wrestling. We are serious wrestling. They did not treat this any differently than the WWE at the time would have treated a women's match. Probably less seriously than 2002 WWE would have. It's probably more like 99 WWF style. Carino basically was Jerry Lawler in this match. Basically perving out on Simply Luscious. There's no wrestling to speak of, just kind of moves and weak strikes. Sakai hits 2 top rope drop kicks. Simply Luscious Simply Luscious gets body slammed, but it was totally botched. Donnie B literally says this. He literally says, Simply Luscious is a machine in that ring. What could have possessed him to say that?
You know what possessed him. You know. They were dating.
Donnie B, not Carino.
Oh, God. Oh, I mixed them up. I'm getting goddamn bad commentator dyslexic. Donnie B. Oh, my God. Like, Carino was horrible here. I would say he was worse than Lawler.
Carino was worse than Lawler and worse than I'd say Donnie B was in any match I've ever heard.
Yes, Carino outdid Donnie B here. He, again, he's doing, like, the moans and intimating that he's going to need to jerk off after watching the match. And, at one point, Carino utters the phrase, kicking her in the baby hatch.
Oh, my
God. Every time, if Simply Luscious is getting in an abdominal stretch, Carino's nearly jizzing in his pants about it. And I wrote in my notes, I've seen women's wrestling matches wrestled in pudding that were treated with more respect than this match is being treated with. Not that it was deserving of a lot of respect, but it was pretty damn sexist. I mean...
gross.
Yeah, and obviously, too, the match was not good. Live reports that were sent at the time to Dave said Simply Luscious against Sumi Sakai was said to be worse than backyard wrestling. Now, I wouldn't go that far, but I will note they botched a body slam a couple times. It's funny because an observer or two ago, Dave said people were raving about the potential of Simply Luscious. She can't get up for a body slam here. They have difficulty doing it.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that Sumi wins with a moonsault, but it doesn't really matter, right? Well, I just don't get if ROH is supposed to be what they're saying they are. What's the point of this? I mean, I guess you want to display women's wrestling, but I know they were good women's wrestlers in 2002, right? They existed.
Yeah.
I don't see what they're trying to prove with this. It just makes it seem like another. I mean, it's sports entertainment at its worst, I would say, just like some of the other segments we've seen, like with the Christopher Street Connection in the past.
And on a show with this much stuff going on, you did not need to jam a 3.5 minute match. I mean, this got a minute more than Scoot and Daniels did. It's just, you did not need to jam this into the show. I mean, you could have still done the Simply Luscious joins the Prophecy, but you didn't need to have the impromptu match. I mean, I don't know, maybe Sheldon Goldberg has a Relapse.com level deal with Sumi Sakai or something, and he had to convince Ring of Honor to book her. But
there's an ongoing storyline with Carino and Luscious and Rudy Boy that's I guess going to build to something, and I guess they thought this developed that, but no, it didn't. It didn't. Yeah. No.
But then we're finally to the final match in the first round of the Ring of Honor title tournament, and that's the debuting Jerry Lynn taking on AJ Styles. And AJ Styles wins here in 15:30, which is the longest of the first round matches by, I would say, over 5 minutes.
And is it the longest undercard ROH match ever up to this point?
I'm not sure. I forget how long Low Key and AJ was. I'm not sure, but and I think one of the scramble type weird Mikey Whipwreck student matches might have been around 15.
Okay,
but it's up there. And AJ wins here. He beats Jerry Lynn clean after the Styles clash.
They show highlights of the match right before the match again.
As always, yes, they have what we'll refer to as the biohazard problem of how do you do a highlight package for a guy that has never wrestled in your company before. And obviously this.
Also, sorry, I don't mean
No,
to
go
interrupt,
ahead.
but there was a totally funny graphic at the beginning of the match that just kept flashing Jerry Lynn and AJ Styles' names over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
And it was like phenomenal one, new effing show, like and just like we're written like 12 times underneath each other, just like in the most basic like white graphics. Like it was really funny. It was like what a sixth grader would do if they started playing with some of these like video editing software stuff. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, Ring of Honor at this point is reaching that sweet spot where they're trying to do more with production, but they still don't have any production skills. I mean, it's not like they run a wrestling like tape place or anything. I mean, it's not like they do this for a living. It's just so. I mean, I'll give them a break, but yeah, it's not great. And this match, I'm going to be interested in hearing what you have to say about it because I thought this match was good, but it didn't connect with me. This match, it's 15 minutes and it's all action. They cut a really good pace here, and they're obviously trying hard, but this felt like the same match they would have had in TNA at this time or in another indie if they were booked to main event another indie. And again, it's another match with no psychology or story or selling, and it doesn't quite have the flash then to make up for it of some of the shorter matches, and you're getting it dragged out to 15 minutes. And again, it's impressive that they keep up the pace for 15 minutes. And I don't know if this is going to be a match that people will like more than me, but there's just something about it where it's weird. I really like AJ Styles, particularly in the last few years. But at this time, I wasn't as hot on AJ as some other people were. And matches like this kind of feel like the reason why I wasn't, because they're just not hitting me kind of maybe the way they're hitting other people. I mean, what did you think?
I definitely liked it more than you. I do think there was selling in the match. I don't think it was like any like deep storyline or anything, but I think they sold. They definitely sold like exhaustion. The crowd was more into it early than they were late, and I guess that's a bad sign. I think once they got more mat based, more toward like the 10, 12 minute mark, they kind of lose the crowd, and then it just kind of they go into that whole like classic Lynn like cradle sequence, like Storm and Fleisch tried to do earlier, and all that stuff, and Styles hit the spiral tap for two. But then they have a miscommunication spot, and I think that hurts the momentum a little bit. And then AJ wins with the Styles Clash. But I thought it was a good, like, hard fought match. It's not something memorable. And I would actually say that what they would do in TNA at this time was better than this. It had a little more intensity, felt like more was at stake. And I do think that these guys were trying a little harder in TNA actually at this point, because they were like more showcase matches between them. But I thought it was good. It was interesting hearing them talk about TNA at the time because it still feels weird to hear them say NWA TNA, which is what it was called for a couple of years there, right? So so they always just said NWA TNA, which I almost like forgot about because it was such a small percent of TNA's history that it was actually called that. But no, I thought it was good. As good as it needed to be. Nothing special, but pretty good. It's interesting here because Jerry Lynn's, he's there and he's actually only a year removed from being in the WWF and having his famous moment where at the Judgment Day 2001 pay-per-view he was at WWF New York and yelled "whoop-de-doo" to JR.
Oh God, oh Jerry.
But I'd say I liked it better than you. But it was like the 3.25 star range.
Yeah, I mean, my star rating wouldn't be that much different. I think it's just probably a case of expectations, I would assume, because this was kind of the marquee match of the first round. Like, there was a lot of huge names in this tournament, but in the first round, a lot of them, didn't have the most premier matchups. And obviously with this being the last match of the first round, and the idea that we're bringing in a pretty big ECW name to come wrestle AJ, and they gave it the most time. I kind of would have hoped for more, although I know AJ also has to save himself for another longer match on the same show, but not horrible. I didn't think it was bad at all, but I would say for anyone that's expecting this, if you're big fans of AJ and Jerry, it's probably not going to be quite what you wanted. I think my audio cut out for a second there.
I thought that this was the best match of the first round, though. The only other one that I would think would compete with it was London versus Spanky, and I thought because of the kind of messed up ending, I would give the slight nod to this one. Although that one was, because it was shorter, it was probably a little more exciting and more of a pleasant surprise.
I would put London and Spanky above this, but maybe just because it's more compact and, like you said, more of a surprise. Mm-hmm. But again, both good matches, and still we're getting better than we had on ROH undercards. So
yeah, this definitely again feels more substantial.
Yeah, and next we get, it's not a match, but I'm gonna have to rely heavily on my notes here because it's a long, arduous segment where I'll try and make this as quick as I can. Dunn and Marcos come out, and they say they're the best tag team in Ring of Honor.
The top tag team in Ring of Honor, which is the debut of something that is their literal catchphrase for the next few years. Seriously, that's their catchphrase.
Yeah, and I love Dunn and Marcos. So, Colt, like, kind of guilty, well, not even a guilty pleasure. I just like them. But they say they're the top tag team. The Hit Squad come out, and they proceed to murder Dunn and Marcos. And I have to admit, I got kind of angry watching this because, like, the Hit Squad are really good at doing brutal squashes, but I just have not liked how they've been portrayed. And just seeing them, like, they're pretty brutal with Dunn and Marcos, and it actually started making me angry at them. Like, at one point, Mafia, he gets Dunn in the corner, and he chops him right in the face. Like, literally a hard chop on purpose into his face. And I was starting to think to myself, like, fuck you guys. Like, all you do is confront teams that are fun and goofy and be complete dicks to them and, like, take advantage of them and beat the living shit out of them. And it started to really piss me off to the point where Divine Storm comes out and Quiet Storm gets on the mic, and Quiet Storm cuts this screamy, angry promo on the Hit Squad where he tells them, that they ain't shit. They
haven't even had a match, right?
Yeah, which gets a pop.
I love
from
that.
The crowd.
I love that.
That made me pump my fist. And the crazy thing is, the crowd, like, treats this promo with a face reaction. And, like, when he says you haven't even had a match yet, like, the crowd pops for this. Like, I wonder if part of them were getting sick of this too.
Yeah, it's like I didn't realize that it was so obvious what we're thinking now back then. Just that, like, these guys, they get pushed, and it's like, oh, these guys are great, they're so stiff, and it's like, but they don't fucking do anything. They just hit moves and hurt other people. And I haven't seen them in other companies at the time, so I'm sure they were better. But the way they're portrayed in ROH is so unlikable.
Yeah, it's just not. Just again, I don't want to judge them as a whole because I haven't seen a ton of them in their other promotions, and I've heard they were better. But they come off as so unlikable here, and as always, when Quiet Storm cuts this promo, Steve Corino does the same. The kid can talk. Like, again, they keep going back to his name is Quiet Storm, so it's a shock that when he talks, even though they've gone through this now on multiple shows.
It must be an intentional joke at this point. It has to be.
Yeah, it's not a good one. Yeah. But at this point, the SAT come in, and they immediately start fighting, and we get kind of a sloppy, kind of impromptu three-way brawl now between the Divine Storm and SAT and Hit Squad. And there's one kind of neat moment where the Hit Squad catch someone on a dive to the outside, and then some other guy dives on top of all of them, which was kind of cool. Someone hits a standard Hurricane Rana, and Donnie B calls it an overhead hand scissors suplex. You're out of your element, Donnie. And Also, during this segment, the announcers keep freaking out about Quiet Storm swearing on the mic because apparently this was the first time in history someone had cussed on the house mic in a Ring of Honor show. And as we had saw earlier on an earlier show with Frank Talent, he didn't want any cussing. So, Christopher Daniels, first guy to break the code of honor. Quiet Storm, first guy to break Frank Talent's code of being a nice guy.
But by the way, I should mention that a lot of this stuff is they do jump cuts. Like they're not showing this unedited. They're editing from one little like mini segment to another. They're cutting out a lot of stuff.
Live, this segment was said to be over 17 minutes. On tape, I timed it out to be around 14 or 15. So yeah, they're making little bit cuts here and there, obvious ones, to try and fit this in, or maybe cut it for a reason we'll talk in a second. Then the Christopher Street Connection and Alice in Danger come out. And when YMCA hits, the crowd actually pops big. Like, the crowd jumps up. They're super excited. Like, you forget how over the Christopher Street Connection was at this point.
Yeah, they were, like I said, they're good. Like, they're good at what they do.
And they come to the ring, and it's almost as soon as they come to the ring, the Natural Born Sinners come out. They take out the Christopher Street Connection, Donnie and Carino rejoice that what they call the 3 Fruit Loops are getting attacked. Mace takes the ugliest cop killer I have ever seen, and not in the sense that it looked painful, but in the sense that it took him 3 tries to jump up for it, and then he landed on his side.
Oof.
I've never seen someone take it that poorly. Alice in Danger gets her skirt hiked up, and each of the Natural Born Sinners spank her. And she's wearing like sexy garters and stuff underneath. So
they had to get in their requisite abuse of women at some point on this show.
I was about to say they made sure to this is this thing that's keeping their streak of weird misogynistic violence against women at 4 straight shows. The streak is not broken thanks to the Sinners. And then the Carnage Crew come out, and at this point the crowd shits all over the Carnage Crew, and they are noticeably quieter for the rest of this. I don't know if they were just getting bored with the whole thing, or if it was purely they hated the crew so much that this took them out of it. The crew attacks this Natural Born Sinners with hubcaps. Finally, the Hit Squad come back in the ring, and they help the Natural Born Sinners take out the Carnage Crew. And the announcers actually acknowledge that like the Natural Born Sinners and the Carnage Crew are friends, and this is kind of like the first time that the announcers have kind of acknowledged that kind of New York crew of Low Key and the Hit Squad and the Sinners all kind of being a group of wrestlers that come up together and are friends and consider them family. And then we get a horrible spot where the Hit Squad literally do the Devon get the table spot, directly ripping off. Like, they literally do that spot.
Yes.
They put the Carnage Crew through a table. And
which felt so indie.
Yeah, like ripping off ECW again.
Ripping off WWE actually, because they never did the Devon get the tables thing in ECW, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you're right. But I mean, it's just such a doofy thing for them to do, and that's the end of the segment. And before I get any kind of thoughts from you,
well,
I'll note that Live Report said like this killed the crowd. Like, people say the crowd was bad for the second part of the show, and people said this is what killed them.
That was not the end of the segment.
Are you talking about the part where they go backstage with Low Key?
Well, they have a big fight in the crowd up front because Homicide is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And like because Hit Squad says that this proves that they're the best team.
Yeah, and the Natural Born Sinners, who are being buddy with them, yeah, they get pissed.
Really pissed. Like, it almost like Homicide actually does a really good job of seeming actually legit like furious at them, to where I'm like actually scared for them, saying like, what the fuck? Like, we're the best team. What are you talking about? And at that point, like the Hit Squad get like really almost like deeply upset about it. They're like, what's his problem? Why is he so mad at us? And and then they go backstage with Low Key, and Low Key basically the Moff goes to Low Key like, what's his problem, man? He comes back from Japan and thinks he's like all hot shit, and Low Key's like, get the cameras away, we're gonna go backstage and settle this as a family. And And as far as like what I think of the segment, it was obnoxious. I'm glad they cut stuff out. Like I said, I do think that the Hit Squad are the least likable of the bunch. I still don't understand why the crowd hated the Carnage Crew so much. Um, I guess there's just maybe, like you said, one team too many that does the same thing. Um, but I guess it accomplishes a few things. It accomplishes setting up the tag title tournament a few months later, and kind of starting that three-way feud with the Carnage Crew, the Sinners, and the Hit Squad to finally get them all involved in something that might have some substance. So I guess that's good. But it was obnoxious, and I don't think it came off super well. Um, but it, honestly, as like it's, I think it maybe sounds a little worse on paper than it actually was. I think that it had some. I don't know, it had some entertainment value seeing all these teams come out. And I do think the Quiet Storm came off like a hero here. Basically,
Yeah,
like
he did.
standing up to the bullies.
And he wasn't. This segment, like they said live, the live report said this killed the crowd and went on way too long. And I would agree it went on way too long. And there was parts of it I didn't like. Like overall, I didn't really like the segment. But if I was there live, it wouldn't have killed me as an audience member. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't completely devoid of entertainment.
right.
I would say the big my big takeaway from this was this should feel like a huge moment because this is all of the Ring of Honor tag teams, a lot of them that have never really interacted with each other before, all like the dedicated teams, finally like all brawling and trying to battle for supremacy and kind of meeting each other. And it's interesting where I've heard you talk about how why is it so hard for wrestling companies to do tag team divisions right? And not enough companies through the years have done good tag divisions. And watching this segment, I realized like, man, Ring of Honor already in their fourth show had a lot of dedicated tag teams. Like, credit to them, they built a tag division. It just wasn't a good one.
Yeah, they just didn't have like tag team matches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this should have felt really a lot cooler than it was. But again, they just wanted to get all these teams on the show, I assume, and wanted something to break up the 2 rounds of the tournament. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, like you said, the Hit Squad and Sinners go backstage. Low-key's like wondering what's up with both of them. Like you said, Mafia outright references the Homicide went to Japan, which they briefly mentioned on the other show, but the announcers have never really mentioned it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Where, like you said, Mafia just goes to Japan and thinks he's a big shot or something, and then Key's trying to corral everyone downstairs to get them to talk and get along, and the camera is gonna go follow them, and Key like goes to the camera like, "No, this is family business," and that's that segment. That was a long segment. Again, it's probably comes off about 15 minutes on DVD, but we're gonna start the second round of the tournament. We're getting there.
Yeah,
Four more matches to go.
yeah. Can you believe this is like now they have intermission and then there's the whole second half of the show after. So this is a let's say for now a diplomatic. We'll say it's a packed show.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea how long this was live, but it obviously was much longer than the 3-hour DVD.
Yeah.
And we get the first match of the second round of the Ring of Honor not world, but just title tournament, and that's Jody Fleisch taking on Spanky. Spanky wins here in 5:13 by pinfall after the sliced bread number 2. Matt, you gab for a bit so I can take a break.
Well, Fleisch looked a lot better here than in his first match, I thought. Just I guess just trying to do a little less, and so I think what he did had a little more impact. Goes for a springboard dive, but Spanky crotches him mid rope, which I thought was very cool. Because usually the crotching is right in the corner. Spanky hits some suplexes on Fleisch. Fleisch overshoots a springboard moonsault and takes out the guardrail, which the crowd loved it, and they really loved that he got up. He got a huge pop for getting up after that. So Fleisch went for the shooting star press. Spanky moves, and Fleisch lands on his feet, which I thought was one of the coolest things of the night so far. So I thought he really got himself over with just those two spots, the taking out the guardrail and then the landing on his feet after missing the shooting star press. I thought like the crowd at that point, the crowd was just like gaga over him. Spanky hit a quick slice bread number two for the win. So it was a very short match, but I thought it had some cool spots. As far as like just like a really short, nothing doing match, it was very entertaining, I would say, and I thought both guys looked good.
I thought, I was not. I did not. I was not as. I didn't like this that much. I thought there was a couple cool moments, but I thought it felt in some ways kind of disjointed, which obviously a 5-minute match can feel that way, kind of herky-jerky. And it didn't make up for that by having as many crazy spots. It did, like you said, have the absolute nutty spot, probably the nuttiest spot of the night, where Jody Fleisch does the moonsault to the outside and crash and burns on the guardrail, which was actually a scary spot. Especially in light of the Chris Marvel injury. Yeah. I imagine if you were in the crowd, live watching that, you're probably thinking, is this going to happen again? And it was crazy for him to even attempt that, because on these early Ring of Honor shows, the guardrail is really pretty close to the ring, and he gets really good distance on this. Like, he doesn't just, sometimes you see in wrestling, a guy does a dive, and he goes a tiny bit too far and kind of nicks, like, the barricade or guardrail. That wasn't this. He crashed way deep into the guardrail and knocked it over.
He pretty much moonsaulted the guardrail completely.
It completely overshoots Spanky. Spanky immediately kind of ducks down and tries to talk to him. And like you said, he gets a big reaction just for standing up. And I did think it was kind of like, it was impressive, but I also thought it was weird where like Donnie B's going, if he gets up, I'll shake his hand, and the crowd's applauding him. And it's like, the thing that he did best on this show that got the biggest reaction was a clear kind of botch spot from a bad idea, which was, I'm going to do this crazy dive, in a place where I really don't have much room to do it. So I thought that was kind of funny. But to me, it was just not too much, just a 5-minute thing. Spanky kind of wins out of nowhere with not out of nowhere, but he hits the slice bread number two. And Spanky at this point, I forget if he's like 6 or 7-0, like between the gauntlet match from last show and the 2 wins here, like he has not lost it. He's the winningest Ring of Honor wrestler so far.
Yep. Yeah. I again, and I thought, there, like I said, not the match maybe was kind of disjointed, but I thought they executed it the way they wanted to, and even the botch, I think, got the crowd more into the match. Whereas I think in their other matches, they didn't execute it exactly the way they wanted to, and I thought that made them look a little more impressive here than they did in some of their other stuff.
It was definitely one of the most memorable things from this show.
Yeah.
And there's some memorable things on this show. So, and then we're going to go to next second round match in the Ring of Honor title tournament, and that's American Dragon taking on Doug Williams. And Doug Williams beats American Dragon here in an upset in 13-17 by pinfall after kind of an inverted suplex that countered the cattle mutilation.
Yeah, and if you want me to get this one so you could have a little bit of a vocal rest, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, sure.
So Dragon goes for an enziguri really early in the match. I just personally, I was really excited for this because I haven't seen it in years, and I thought Williams looked really good, and I love obviously Dragon at this time also. So Dragon hits that enziguri. It's like a very early big spot, but I would say Williams is the first guy who looks as good or better when wrestling Dragon in terms of the hold for hold stuff. I was just so impressed with how he looked, as we've discussed. Donnie B talks about in ROH has a variety of styles other promotions wouldn't, and his example, the British style of Doug Williams and the flashy Jody Fleisch. Now, I get that they both have different styles, but it's just funny that he's like, well, the one has a British style and the other is just British. And
also, he's picking 2 British wrestlers that came in for the first time on this show.
Yeah, that's funny also.
Yeah.
So like he's a representative of the styles in ROH, but they've had like 1 match so far, or 2 matches so far each. So Williams takes control, and he looks very good. He puts Dragon in a variety of holds. They talk about how Doug is not there to entertain, but I thought he was entertaining. And yeah, this is where Carino says Williams didn't become good by watching British wrestling. So the both guys have heel hooks on each other, and they each roll to the floor like while holding onto them, which I thought was pretty cool. Like they're both lying like leg to leg, and they're both holding each other's heels, and they both roll out onto the floor. Um, Williams hits a spinning DDT for two. Dragon hits a cravat suplex, which Donnie B calls a front face chancery neck breaker suplex. It's literally what he calls it. Moves, maybe maybe he should just name the moves. They are more fun sounding. Um, Dragon kicks out of the Chaos Theory, which gets a big pop, and this is like becomes like something that they know that like that Dragon kicks out of everyone's finishers. Kicked out
Yeah,
of Slice Bread number two, kicked out of the Key Crusher, kicked out of the Angel's Wings.
I really like they made the commentators made a note of which I thought was good considering that Dragon's going to lose here and he's lost a couple matches in Ring of Honor. They make a note that like even if he loses, he's kicked out of the Key Crusher, he's kicked out of, like you said, the Slice Bread number two. Now he's kicked, and they act like, in fact, I think they try. This probably isn't true, but I think Carino acts like no one has ever kicked out of the Chaos Theory.
Right, and I have no idea if that's true, but it's
They're putting it big, over big, at
right,
least.
right. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not. Um, Dragon hits the top rope belly to back, and Williams immediately gets out of cattle mutilation. Like as soon as he puts it on, gets immediately out and does sort of like a neck cradling thing and gets Dragon into the pin. Um, I thought this match, I liked it. Like I thought it was good, but I was maybe a little disappointed in it. Like I thought it was very well wrestled, but I didn't feel like there was much of a story to it. But there were certain things in it that I liked a lot, and I thought, obviously I think they're both awesome. But I just didn't. I thought the match was maybe a little less than some of its parts.
We're back to agreeing. Yay, we're friends again. Because I thought the first couple minutes looked like they were going to have a story, because what I liked in the first couple minutes is there was a lot of kind of bravado, and they were doing these kind of technical grappling chain wrestling exchanges, and there was a real swagger, particularly from Dragon, actually, where I think after one exchange he screams, "Come on, Doug Williams!" Like it really felt in the first couple minutes like what you'd want this match to be, which is two guys known for being technically great kind of battling it out for the title of who's the best technical wrestler. And like you said, one of the standout spots in the match where they both have simultaneous knee bars and roll to the outside of the ring, and they're still holding them on outside the ring. That's a spot that could feel gimmicky elsewise, but I think it fit the story perfectly here, which is this was a huge battle of pride, and these guys, they didn't want to lose out on the battle of who was the best guy on the mat. Now, the problem, I think, is after those first kind of few minutes, other than that knee bar moment, they kind of abandoned that to just do super action-packed, abandon the story, just do wrestling. And it's really good for what it is. But my thought when I was watching this, which was a little weird because Doug Williams is 29, I thought this is a young man's match. Like, I thought watching this, if you did this same match 10 years later, they wouldn't have wrestled it this way. Like, I think at one point, Dragon, Dragon like hits the top rope headbutt. He takes a suplex to the floor. He lands on his feet about as safe as you can, but that's still kind of a big thing to take it from, Doug Williams is on the apron and he suplexes Dragon from in the ring to the floor. Like you said, Dragon hits the belly to back superplex, and all these moves, like nothing gets time to breathe. It's like bam, 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 onto the next move, bam, onto the next move, which is a little different from what I expect from Dragon matches. Like even the Chaos Theory suplex, Dragon, kicks out, and while the announcers are like, no one's ever kicked out of the Chaos Theory suplex, Dragon's on offense probably 5 to 10 seconds later, like while they're still talking about that.
Right.
Which, again, it's still a really entertaining match because of the action, but it was kind of surprising how these guys, especially Dragon, of really smart, thoughtful wrestlers, were kind of doing what most other guys in this card are doing, which was let's just pack this match with action. And if we lose some other aspects of wrestling, that's okay. Like, again, Dragon throwing out kind of almost all his biggest moves here.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of the exact critique, I guess you could say, that I would have. But they'll have other chances, and I still think it was It was good. I just don't think it was as good as it could have been.
Yeah, I still enjoyed this match. I did enjoy it. I guess maybe I'm criticizing it for not being the match I wanted it to be, that I thought it was starting out as.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I've heard some people look down on that, say, critique a match for what it is and not what you want it to be. But they kind of teased me with it this time, so I think it's okay because they kind of gave you a hint of what they could have done. I also thought the ending. I thought it was cool that Williams wins by countering the cattle mutilation into, he kind of herks him up and does an inverted suplex and does that kind of like 3/4 Nelson pin. But I also thought it was a little bit underwhelming in the sense that they did so much in the time they had to hit so many big moves that just doing an inverted suplex and then getting the pin kind of felt a little bit, even though it was countering a finisher. I kind of wish they had done kind of a bigger move than that to finish the match.
Yeah. A lot of these finishes feel abrupt to me.
Yeah, and I also wish that Donnie B hadn't called it an Ocean Cyclone suplex, because what Doug Williams did, because I YouTubed it just to make sure my memory was correct. This move in no way resembles an Ocean Cyclone suplex. So it's funny how oddly specific he was while being completely wrong.
Yeah, this was actually the front face chancery neckbreaker suplex.
Yeah, normally Donnie B
just kidding.
You really? Oh crap! Gotta change my notes. But no, Donnie B, like you were saying, he usually just does word foo when he doesn't know a move. He'll kind of approximate what he thinks it is and then add another 4 descriptors to it. But so it was kind of weird for him to come up with an actual not common suplex in North America and then be completely wrong about it. But yeah, I would say good match, but not very good. Action packed, but could have had a bit more personality other than the first few minutes. But still, again, and obviously they said live this was a big surprise because Doug Williams was a British kind of fly-in, and here he's beaten Dragon. But Dragon's not even going to be on the next show.
Yeah, but maybe we didn't know that yet at the time.
Yeah.
So that is noteworthy, actually. They flew Doug Williams in, and he gets put into the ROH title match. Now, we should mention, because I don't know if we actually did mention this. This tournament is building up a 4-way Iron Man match at the next show. And the winners of all the different, quote, blocks are going to be in this 4-way, and there's going to be a whole point system, which we'll explain on the next show. Yeah. And so far, we have now Spanky, and we have Doug Williams in the 4-way for the next show for the title.
Mm-hmm. And Doug Williams is kind of, when we get to the end of this, is the one surprise, I would say. I think you'd expect everyone else to have a good shot of being in except for Williams. So it's kind of cool that they threw in, kind of a surprise entrant. I think when you have a 4-way, it gives you more license to kind of give you one surprise guy like that. Semi-main event is The Amazing Red versus Low Ki in a second round ROH title tournament match. Low Ki beats The Amazing Red in 11 minutes, 16 seconds after hitting a second rope key crusher. And this is easily the most famous match on the show. This is the match people remember from the show, and more specifically, they remember the first minute of this match, which is there's a sequence in the first minute where Ki tries to hit Red 100 times. Red, it's not actually that many, but Red avoids them all, very quick and choreographed. And the crowd loses their minds for this sequence. The announcers lose their mind. I remember even reading the internet at that young, tender age. People talked about this segment and singled it out and would compare other segments to what they would just refer to as the Ki Red segment. The crowd just comes unglued for this. Donnie B calls it The Matrix meets movie magic.
Which makes me say, what does he think The Matrix is?
Yeah. Either Donnie B thinks The Matrix is real, or doesn't know what movies are, or something. It's like saying it's a hot dog meets a sausage in a bun. What, Donnie? Oh, Donnie, I'm starting to love you. But this is a match, it's completely different from everything else on the card. And I think low key matches in general are kind of unique by the nature of low key. But this was very much, I think, kind of a mix of some of the brutal things low key can do with kind of the very athletic stuff he and Red can do. There's some real brutality to some of how low key treats Red in this. Like I noted, low key wrestles Red here, and they're the same size. But the way low key works and the way they work this match, it feels like low key 7 foot tall, 350 pounds. Even though they're basically the same size, very similar. But he beats up on Red. He at one point he lifts Red into kind of a key crusher cradle type position over his shoulders, and he just runs Red super hard into the other corner turnbuckle.
Yeah, he calls that the crush rush.
Yeah, and Red falls over the turnbuckles, and the camera doesn't catch his bump, but from like the crowd reaction on that side of the ring, he must have taken like a really bad fall, because they kind of give like that kind of ooh, like jump out of your chair, this kid just killed himself reaction. And I thought this was easily Red's best performance in Ring of Honor. Some of the sequences don't hold up quite as well. I think the thing that surprised me revisiting this match is the opening sequence that everyone talks about is not as long or as fast as I remembered it, and the crowd even starts cheering halfway through it. But I guess in the age of Will Ospreay and Ricochet matches and stuff like that, they've set the bar so much higher for how long and complicated these kind of choreographed back and forth sequences go. But it's credit to these guys. It's still impressive. There's a sequence later that doesn't get talked about that ends with I think Red hitting a standing shooting star press that I think is just as good, that people don't talk about as much. Just a really exciting, entertaining match. And maybe it loses a little bit 15 years later, but I think just the nature of how brutal it was in spots and I think some of it still really holds up.
Yeah, I think I might even like this more than you. But I used the same phrase. I said very exciting match, still entertaining. But I thought I would actually go as far as to say it was a great match. I thought it was better than the low-key AJ Styles match from the month earlier. That opening was cool, but I think the match itself that they had was even more impressive. Like, first of all, it was the first match that I really saw Red selling, like really selling. And I thought he did a really good job of it. This underdog selling thing. I thought the timing of some of these kicks were awesome. Like, just low-key blocking Arana and then just destroying Red with a capo kick. Then Red blocks the tidal wave kick with a top rope drop kick, which I thought was awesome. Then he key capo kicks Red off the middle rope onto the floor. Like, I just thought, so some of these moves are just so brutal. The first time Key goes for the crush rush, Red reverses into almost like a flip driver thing that looked really cool. The only move that I thought really looked sloppy was the reverse Rana that Red hit on Loki. I don't think that really hit cleanly, but I just thought it was totally awesome. Like, everything they did. The crowd was like, I think they woke up the crowd because this was like a really long night. The crowd was fairly respectful. They were a good crowd, but they had to be like dying at this point. And this match I thought got just as hot a reaction as it would have gotten in the first few matches. So to me it stands out as a unique match during this early period. And I thought Loki has been giving great performances the entire time. I thought both guys looked great in this match, and Red got a big standing O at the end with a Red chant. I was impressed by this 15 years later. Like, I did not expect to like it this much.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes it hold up is that brutality, because watching it was like 1 minute you'd see something really kind of athletic and pretty, and then the next minute you'd see something just brutally violent from low key. And I think that mix is something that to this day, 15 years later, not a lot of guys accomplish, like have matches like that.
Yeah, possibly maybe because some like the guys wrestle a little safer now, so
Yeah.
the brutality, like, it actually is novel again.
And credit to Red, he plays really good underdog here, and he's willing to like bump and take the abuse here. I think obviously Key kind of shows off how he can be stiff and brutal in every match, but a guy like Red really enhances that by how what he's willing to take and how he's willing to sell it. And like you pointed out, something I missed, I think is really good to point out. There was selling in this match, even though there was a lot of big spots and craziness. They did also let things breathe at some point.
The selling, I think, made the match in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's the difference, and this match did not, it's only an 11-minute match, but they still found time for it. Sometimes people go, oh, a short match. They don't have time for stuff like that. And I've used that as an excuse on this show for matches that are like 4 minutes long. But once you get to 11, you can still have a complete show stealer match, which is what this was. The best match on the show and the match everyone came away talking about from this show. And still have selling, still let things breathe a little bit. I will say there is one spot that was a bit iffy other than the one you mentioned, which is low-key goes for a big kind of a handspring type kick. And Red's on the ropes, like on the outside of the ropes, and the kick clearly whiffs. But even that, I thought Red did a great job of, once he realizes it whiffs, he kind of leans back like, oh, I was trying to dodge that. And then he just stands there and lets Low-Ki kick him with a different kick. And I thought, a guy that young, some guys would have just bumped anyway, even though it was a clear whiff. And he was smart enough to go, I'm not going to sell this. I'm not going to be a deer in the headlights. I'm going to react and just wait for what comes next. And that actually impressed me.
It's a very good point. I also liked at the end when Key hit the top rope Key Crusher, like it was a delayed cover. Like he was selling before he covered, but the move was still so devastating that it still got 3, even though the cover was delayed. I thought that was good and impactful.
I really like that too. It harkens back to the Dragon Key match from Round Robin Challenge where, Key hits the top rope Key Crusher on Dragon and would have probably won the match in story. But again, just in that match too, he's too exhausted from doing it to like cover him, and Dragon rolls to the outside. And I thought it's great he kind of kept consistent on that, where he hits the move, and even though he does win, he has to crawl. It takes time. It took a lot out of him to hit that. And I think it does put Red over, even that, like, he had to pull that out to beat Red. He showed him respect where he had to hit him with that big a move to beat him.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, to me, this is the best match on the show. I would agree with you. It's better than AJ Low-Ki. I wouldn't put on the level, obviously, of the very first show, 3-Way or Key Dragon.
Right.
But I would say it. Other than those, I mean. And again, Key's had the standout match on all 4 shows, I would argue now.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So we're left with one match.
Well, we have
actually. Yeah, segment.
Yes.
I missed again. Yeah. Post match, Brian XL comes out because Brian XL getting a weird push was still a thing in mid 2002, and he gets on the mic for some unintelligible ranting. He attacks Red, which brings up the SAT to Spanish Fly Brian XL. That was pointless.
Donnie B calls Brian XL a, quote, nappy-headed goof, which just made me say, like, why? Like, why do you have to go there? It doesn't make any sense. It's totally unnecessary. But that is wrestling, but it's stupid and it sucks.
I mean, Donnie B, head of his time, years before I forget. Imus had said nappy-headed hoe. Here comes nappy-headed for. I mean, people weren't being, I don't know, outright racist, but there was a lot of like little Bow Wow comments and stuff to Brian XL. And it's tough to give them the benefit of the doubt considering what Ring of Honor was early on. But it doesn't get completely there, but it is a little bit makes you want to tug on your collar a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Backstage, Boogaloo is pissed that someone said they were the best tag team and not them. That's a horrible offense. Homicide then plugs a Natural Born Sinners versus Carnage Crew match for the next show that will be a bunkhouse brawl. And so they're openly, building to a match. And Homicide says he drinks blood like milk. So I guess that means he's a vampire.
We drink blood at nighttime, just like fucking milk. Is how he says it.
That's such a Homicide thing where, like, it sounds cool when he says it, Yeah. It shouldn't sound cool, but like, so you sound like you're trying too hard. But for some reason, Homicide gets away with it.
Got it.
We get one more little segment before the main event where Brian Excel is backstage and he confronts Divine Storm for not having his back. They call him out for basically being Brian Excel. Quiet Storm calls Excel biatch, 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 getting revenge on him for last month. And then XL storms off saying he'll find someone else to fight his battles with him. So that's building up to something that we'll see in a little bit.
Yep. I guess we're gonna get a brand new stable that will make its mark in a lot of ways.
Something that can appreciate the 420 match time earlier. But main event now, the very last match in the second round of the Ring of Honor title tournament of the second round. Christopher Daniels defeats AJ Styles in 21 minutes 49 seconds after he hits the last rites.
Bold of them to do a 20-minute match for 13 other matches. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, you could say it's traditional because the main event usually goes long. But you would think if they would ever call an audible or something, to do a match that's nearly 22 minutes after what was probably a heck of a long card live. Matt, how about you take this one?
Yeah, well, to start, Donnie B calls this match a dream match people have dreamed up for their entire lives, and it just made me think, like, oh, how quaint when Daniels versus Styles was a dream match, as opposed to a match that people have seen so many times that they can call it in their sleep. But reasonable of him to say at the time. Grappling to start, Daniels works over Styles' arm, and Carino calls this the greatest wrestling card of all time.
Yeah.
And I've said this, it probably from top to bottom was the greatest ROH card so far.
I'll say this: Dave Meltzer, when he saw the show later, he wrote something to the effect of he thought this was like the best show of the year in 2002 up to this point, which was over halfway through the year. So, I mean, by the standards of the time, I don't know if I would agree with that, but Steve Carino obviously huge into hyperbole, but I mean, people were considering for the time that this show. I also saw letters to the Observer where people were raving. So, for the time, people thought this was an absolutely incredible show.
Fair enough, and it certainly was the best ROH show, which we can talk about when I'm done talking about this. But I hadn't seen Daniels really have such a mat-based match before this. Like, he was really working the mat a lot early in this match, and I thought he was doing a good job. And I thought it was an interesting choice following everything they've seen with such a mat-based match. But the crowd was mostly accepting of it, I would say. They definitely seemed tired, but they were not being disrespectful. And you'll see that, like, Daniels, he kind of switches back and forth from doing like chin locks and like headlocks and like neck base holds to arm stuff. Like, he goes like back and forth from one to the other. The first big move of the match, I would say, is the kip up Rana by AJ. And then they kind of start like doing more high impact stuff. AJ drop kicks Daniels to the outside, does a corkscrew tope onto Daniels. I'd say they punch each other on the apron, and AJ at this time has a very unfortunate mix where his punches look really stiff, but they also kind of look shitty. Like he has bad punches that probably hurt.
That reminds me of that old Mick Foley thing where he was talking about I think Vader, and he says, there are people that have good looking punches that don't hurt at all, and there are people that have bad looking punches that really hurt. And he says Vader had good looking punches that really hurt. So it sounds like AJ was the second of those three things, like you were just saying.
Yeah. I mean, his punches have definitely gotten better over the years, but at the time, his punches seemed very awkward. Daniels knocked AJ off the apron and into the guardrail, and then AJ does a pretty good blade job, I have to say. Like, better than I expected for this kind of match. And so AJ's bleeding, and the crowd gets really into it, as they tend to do in those situations. And at this point, the match turns into, like, Daniels just beating AJ down. Like, AJ's bloody and battered, fighting from behind, and Daniels is just beating the crap out of him. And I think it's pretty effective. He attacks the cut. He flapjacks AJ and kind of preens to the crowd. he does sort of like a, I don't know, what do you call like a lion salt? What's the official name? Because I know is an acai moonsault is technically like doing
To
that
the
to
outside,
the
isn't it?
outside.
Yeah.
So what is it? I just call it a lion salt at this point, but I don't know if there's an actual name for it. Just a springboard moonsault? Like I don't.
I would call it either a lion salt, or I guess the technical term would be a second rope springboard moonsault, because I mean that's what it is. It's
Yeah, I guess so. So Daniels misses that, and AJ finally comes back after a lot of being beaten down. He hits a brain buster, and then hits a springboard moonsault of his own, while Daniels is hung up in the ropes for two. So like Daniels is like in the ropes, like like sitting on the second rope, like with like his torso like in the ring and his legs outside the ring, and AJ jumps from the apron into the ring, springboards onto Daniels with a moonsault, which I thought was pretty cool. Um, but then Daniels gets the Koji clutch on AJ, and the crowd gets really into it with chanting for AJ, and he reverses the Koji clutch into a pinning combo, and that gets AJ to that gets Daniels to release the hold. Um, Daniels drops AJ on the top rope and leaps to the buckle with a leg drop for two. Or leaps, I should say, off the buckle with a leg drop for two. Enziguri by AJ kind of leads to like the double knockout spot. And then Daniels hits just like a brutal STO on AJ. Hits the Blue Thunder Bomb for two, goes for the BME, and AJ shakes the ropes, and Daniels gets knocked down. And AJ and then hits the DDT for two. The kind of like the moonsault DDT that he does. And then Daniels reverses the Styles Clash with the heel hook. AJ kicks his way out. Donnie B says that when he watches okay, so this is what okay, so I was wondering what I wrote this down for. Okay. So Donnie B's talking about this, and he's talking about seeing Ring of Honor live in the middle of this like, big main event match, right? And he says, "Well, I really love watching shows live because I got to be honest, usually when I watch these shows on tape, I just fast forward through the whole thing."
Oh
Which,
my god, I forgot that.
which is hilarious because like they're trying to sell tapes. So he's basically saying that he's fast forwarding through this stuff that you are all watching like saps. Um,
Well, yeah, he makes it sound like he's trying to put over to go see the live shows, but he completely he makes it sound like watching wrestling on tape. How can you get into that? Like, and it's a DVD product, or I guess
it's a
a VHS
tape,
product.
yeah, VHS
Yeah,
product,
yeah.
where you could still fast forward in the traditional sense. Yeah, which is ridiculous. AJ goes for another done one of the backflip DVD DDTs, but Daniels reverses into the last rights and he gets the win. And I thought it was very good. Like I thought they worked a good match. It definitely told the story. AJ did a good job selling. Like I said, his punches look bad. There was something about the match that kept it from being great, I would say. I can't totally put my finger on it. It might have just been the long night. Um, but it was, I don't really have too many specific critiques of the match. I just thought it was really good.
I probably liked it. I liked it less than you. I would say it's above average, but my same critique applies that you just gave, which is I can't single out things that were well. I'm going to single out something, but I can't single out too much that was bad. It just didn't connect with me again, and it's the second AJ Styles match on this show that does that. The one thing I'll say, I'm kind of going to make a larger point about it is. I thought, like you were saying, it was an interesting choice that after a show this long, they chose to start kind of have a slow start. Not only are they doing a 2-minute basic match, they're doing quite a bit of very almost not super kind of dry mat work to start. I think it was fairly well done, but I don't think it was as engaging of mat work as like Dragon Low Key. Obviously, that's a super high standard to get to. But it's something we had seen only a couple shows earlier.
Well, this was more traditional wrestling mat work, and that was more like MMA style grappling. So I do think there's some difference there.
But it was interesting and it is something I could see the thought process of this crowd just saw something absolutely insane with Red and Low Key, and they've been through a long night. So let's kind of calm everyone down and build them back up again. And I've heard wrestlers talk about that as a thought process for matches before. And I think the thing that's kind of the thing that I wouldn't have done, of course, I'm not a wrestler, so it's stupid for me to there's lots of things I wouldn't do as a wrestler, like do anything that could possibly hurt me a tiny bit. But one thing that they do is just as the match is starting to ramp up, that's when AJ does the blade job. And I'll give big credit to Daniels. Daniels, when AJ bleeds, Daniels works the cut. Like, I think a lot of wrestlers, they make the mistake of, if someone bleeds, they just keep working the match they would work no matter what, and just it's their match plus blood. But Daniels, for the first minute or two after AJ bleeds, completely changes how he works. Like, he's punching on it, he's like taking him to the other part of ringside and like tearing at it, he's grinding on it, he's working to the cut, he's working to what just happened in the match. And I really like that. But my only problem with that was they started with like kind of a slow start. They start kicking the match into a second gear, and then the blood makes them slow it right back down again. And you still get a big long sequence at the end. A 20-plus minute match gives you lots of time to do stuff, to do bigger stuff at the end. But I just felt like it might have been better to like maybe have a quick hot opening and then slow it down because of the cut, rather than they kind of did this weird up and down thing. There was just something that the work was all really solid. And again, you really appreciate guys like Daniels and Styles who are just so technically proficient when some guys aren't. Although on this show, I thought the standard of work was higher, but compared to some of the other shows, I always love a good finish. And I thought Daniels countering the kind of the springboard into the reverse DDT into the last rites was like a really fluid spot that, those two moves flowed really well together. So I really thought that was a good looking finish. And, you could tell the crowd, that was the spot the crowd popped the biggest for. And I love that they ended on that, because Lord knows in indie wrestling, a lot of times guys don't end on like the biggest spot. And that was a match. Sorry, go.
As I say, so it sounds like you liked this match more than you think you liked it.
It's weird, because it's going back to what you said, which is, there's something about it that just misses, even though I can't say it, Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that it's a bad match, because it isn't. It's good. It's just, and quite frankly, I think you were hinting at, these two have had better matches,
Yes.
But I don't know what the missing ingredient is to this one. But I also sympathize with them a lot, because they had like the worst time. On paper, Daniels and AJ sounds like the right main event, but after like the last two matches, especially Key and Red, and how late the show went, like I feel bad that they had to be in this position.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough spot to be in. And for someone like, well, first of all, I mean, there are 4 shows into the company, so no one's that established. But AJ really like is presented as like a newcomer, right? He just showed up in the second show, so he wasn't there on those foundational shows, and then he's asked to main event. And I guess, he was, a main eventer to some degree in NWA TNA already. So it's not like nobody knew who he was, but he's still, in the context of ROH, is not presented yet as like a full main eventer.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think it's during this match, it might have been a different one, I'm not sure, but they announced that Low Key and AJ Styles will have a rematch at the first Ring of Honor show in Boston. So they're already building that up, but it's kind of interesting because, AJ loses again. He's lost to Key, although that was kind of a disputed finish, and now he's lost to Daniels. But they did give him the win over Jerry Lynn. So that was a little interesting, where they're obviously wanting to push him, but they also wanted to make sure at first to kind of make sure he put over a couple guys first.
Yeah. Well, in a company like this, where every show is like almost like a super card, in the context of the company, and everyone, major stars are wrestling each other, you don't really have time to do squash matches.
Yeah.
So like a guy like Dragon, can lose, 3 out of 4 of his first matches and still be one of the top guys. And, I guess it's the same thing for AJ.
Yeah. So overall, again, I don't know if you have anything else to say about this match. No. Above average. Something missed, but there was a lot of there was a lot of entertaining stuff on this show. So, on another show, this would have stood out probably even this probably would have stood out more. But post-match, we get a few things. And the first thing is Donnie B comes out and says he's got to make a huge announcement. And he was actually teasing this on commentary during the match. Steve Corino was like, I got to know, what is it? And, Donnie B wouldn't tell him. And Donnie B says he's going to make this huge announcement. And Christopher Daniels, gets on the mic. And he keeps interrupting Donnie B. Donnie B will try and make the announcement, and Daniels will be like, the announcement is the Code of Honor is a farce. And just keep talking, and the crowd's cheering. And then Donnie can't make the announcement. Finally, Spanky comes in, and he attacks Daniels, and they brawl on the outside, which lets Donnie announce that starting in September, Ring of Honor would get their own local TV show called High Impact TV on the local Philly station. And I think we don't want to get too deep into this, but I guess this is the point in the Ring of Honor history where we should acknowledge that Ring of Honor actually had a TV show in its first year. It was just on a Philadelphia channel. I forget which one. I wrote it down somewhere, but I think I don't know what its time slot was always, but I know at least the first episode premiered. I think either it was a Tuesday midnight time slot. I think it was an hour long. It was called High Impact TV, and it showed almost nothing but old Ring of Honor matches. And I think it ran from September 3rd, 2002 till January 14th, 2003. So it did not last very long. It did not it was a disappointment to Ring of Honor because it did not improve their drawing at all to the live events, or I don't think their DVD sales either, or tape sales at this point. This channel apparently also showed CZW and NWA Wildside, so they were kind of into the indies. And the only other thing I'll mention about High Impact TV at this point is here's the first show that premiered on September 3rd. Starts with a promo from Low Key introducing the Ring of Honor and the Code of Honor. Then the Hit Squad versus the Christopher Street Connection from the Era of Honor begins. So they thought that was still a good way to introduce people to Ring of Honor. Then James Maritato versus Xavier from Round Robin Challenge, which was like a nothing match.
Yeah, that's probably the most inexplicable, honestly.
Yeah. Then, and here's an odd thing, a clip of Bret Hart's RF video shoot interview where he talks about Owen Hart's death. That's the fourth thing that airs. Then Low Key versus Daniels versus Dragon, clipped from Era of Honor begins. Because, of course, you had to clip this because you had to make time for Maritato versus Xavier. And then finally, a Steve Corino promo for the Corino versus American Dragon match that never happened at the 9/21 Ring of Honor show. So, yeah, that doesn't sound maybe like the best way to introduce people to Ring of Honor.
No, I mean, it doesn't. If you had just had a show, I mean, I don't know what they really could have done, but, I would say maybe like just a couple of low-key matches. Like maybe the three-way from the first show, and then Red versus Low Key, and just focus on him a little bit on the first show. I think that probably would have been a better. I mean, I don't know. They didn't really film the shows like the TV product, so it's hard to really say what they could have done differently. But yeah, definitely showing the Christopher Street Connection stuff, not the way to go.
It's just something that's a little bit interesting because some people might not realize that they technically had a TV show this early, and it paid no dividends for them and was very short-lived, but it did happen.
A trivia note, basically.
Yeah, if you're playing ROH Trivial Pursuit, this will definitely be a question that you can wow your friends with. Then the segment continues in the ring where Ref John Finnegan comes out. He calls Spanky, Doug Williams, Daniels, and Low Key all into the ring because he wants to unveil the new Ring of Honor title that they'll all be fighting for at the next show. And Daniels, again, he keeps interrupting, and then he tries to steal it while it's still in like the cloth bag. And so this leads to a four-way brawl, and we never see the title. Not that that's a big deal, but it's kind of funny. I don't know if we're supposed to be like so mad at Daniels because we don't get to see the title a month early because of him. And then the segment ends with Key puts Daniels in the Dragon Clutch, and he won't let go of it. And Donnie and Carino sell this as something that could kill Daniels. People like Rudy Boy and other people rush the ring. Mafia, Key's friend, like tries to talk Key down, like, let go, man, you gotta let go.
What's funny about the Moff thing is, like, he never changes his strategy of doing this because he walked in, he thinks he's gonna give him a stern talking to. He's like, let go, man, let go. And then and then he like just yells at everyone else, get away, get away. I can do this. I can handle this. Like, and then you just go back. He just goes right back to, you gotta let go, let go. And like this happens like 3 more times, and you just like the whole time he's just like, let go. Like this is his entire strategy. It never changes. He clearly is not working.
Not once does any of like the 5 or 6 people in the ring ever try saying stomping Low Key or hitting him at all, like you would in wrestling to make him release a hold. Like,
yeah.
Everyone's just talking to him, even though Low Key in this position is completely defenseless too if someone just wanted to like kick him in the head.
Yeah, I feel like if Daniels like wasn't a real choke and like was killed from this choke, all of the the bystanders there would be at least somewhat at fault for not being more proactive in stopping this potential murder that's happening.
It would definitely be a last episode of Seinfeld situation where they get all in trouble for not helping.
Yeah.
Because they all clearly could have tried. And so the segment ends where rather than, this goes on for at least 2 or 3 minutes. And rather than, the way it resolves is all the people in the ring carry Key and drag into the back while Key is still holding, Key and Daniels, while Key is still holding Daniels in the dragon clutch. So he never breaks it. We don't see how he breaks it. They literally could have just put a video saying Christopher Daniels died backstage half an hour later, like the way they treated this,
Well, maybe he's literally an angel.
The prophecy, he didn't see the most important part of his prophecy, which was his own demise.
Yes.
But it was entertaining, but probably not for the reasons they wanted it to be entertaining.
I actually thought it made some sense because Daniels just kept like needling and needling and needling, and eventually Key just snapped. I actually, as ridiculous as it was, kind of liked it.
And they're really leaning into, like, even at the start of the show with Key being so angry at the mere mention of Daniels, like, they're leaning into, Key can't stand Daniels.
Yeah.
Like, he loses control when he hears about Chris Daniels. And obviously, it's building up big to the next month's show. So, and I appreciate, again, they're building up matches even though this is a natural match to build because it's the tournament. But next, we have a few quick little backstage segments to take us out. A bloody AJ Styles is backstage, and his cut's still bleeding, and he says next month he's going to wrestle Adam Jones and David Young from NWA Wildside in Ring of Honor, and they're going to show what the
South will rise.
The South will rise, and they're going to show what the South is all about. He explains why he didn't shake Christopher Daniels' hand after the main event, saying that it's because he's a professional. I guess insinuating, because Daniels isn't a professional, he's not going to shake his hand. And he says next time that he wrestles Daniels, he'll give him a good reason to not be shaking hands because he'll break his hand.
Yeah.
So it was fairly intense from AJ. He wasn't the world's best promo, but I was surprised that he wasn't completely dry either at this point.
Yeah, I actually wrote not a bad promo, which I was impressed by.
Better than I thought from 2002 AJ Styles. Next, we get literally a 5-second segment. Rudy Boy is backstage looking for Simply Luscious but can't find her. This is a segment literally building up a segment that's going to happen in a couple minutes. Spanky then goes up to American Dragon backstage to rub it in his face that Dragon lost in the tournament and he won. And he notes that Dragon isn't even booked for the next show. And then Dragon gets pissed and challenges Spanky to a 2 out of 3 falls match in Boston, which Spanky accepts. The screen has a graphic telling us it's going to happen. It never happens. I assume this is because Spanky started with 0-1 shortly after this show, so I assume Zero. I looked it up on like PureLove.com just to make sure like Spanky was literally working on the day of the Ring of Honor Boston show in 0-1. So I would say this is the first great lost ROH match. You know, there's probably more than a couple, but this is probably the first announced match that for whatever reason never happens.
I will say Spanky and Dragon do get to have their great ROH match a few years later.
Yeah, in like 2028, through the years we'll cover that match.
Yeah,
and looking forward to it. And then next segment is Carnage Crew. They plug their bunkhouse match with the Natural Born Sinners on the next show, and they attack some more ring crew people.
so mean.
Yeah, they are building quite a few matches up, like more than they've always been doing it since day one. But with these little segments in the second half of the show, they're really building up for the next couple shows.
Yeah, 2 shows ahead.
Yeah.
Doing. And Loke says, "Honor my fucking ass."
And then we get the final segment, and this is what ends the show. I don't know if this was night vision or just green tinted because it was outside, but a camera finds Steve Carino and Simply Luscious making out like behind the arena, and they don't notice for an uncomfortably long time. And the thing that really made me scratch my head was they're making out right next to an open dumpster, and it's like you could have made out anywhere in that area. Why you pick next to open dumpster? Why? And so the camera finally, Carino notices. Carino gives like the most fakey, evil, like kind of villain laugh. He goes, "Thanks, Rudy boy."
I'm still trying to figure out what's villainous about this, because it's like they're 2 adults, like, you know, making out, which is, I think, perfectly fine. And even if you want to say like it's bad because Carino is a bad guy and he's a corrupting influence, like she's already a member of the prophecy. So really, what's there to corrupt? So I don't really see what's so dastardly about Carino here. That's what you know what I mean?
And also, Carino has very obviously made his intentions clear ever since Simply Luscious showed up. Every match she's involved with, he's lusting over her on commentary. So,
in fact, the first time she shows up, they kind of do a different angle where they sort of talk about like hush hush, they're already dating, and then they kind of switch it to him like trying to get in her pants.
Yeah. So, and it's just funny because then we get the big like "to be continued" with an exclamation mark graphic on the screen, and that's how the show ends. And again, it's funny that Ring of Honor is the kind that keeps telling you throughout these shows over and over again, not sports entertainment. And that is like a raw ending, you know?
Yeah.
Like Steve Carino, a guy who hasn't had one match in Ring of Honor yet, is making out with a valet who isn't really a serious wrestler at this point. And we get a "to be continued." And that's, you know, that's our cliffhanger.
Yeah. Early ROH does some things that are refreshing compared to like WWF at the time, in the sense of like they really don't do rough bumps, and they really, for their big matches, do have clean finishes. But otherwise, I'd say they're just as sports entertainment as any other wrestling in terms of like the kind of skits and angles and characters that they present. Like it doesn't ring true, this whole like we're not sports entertainment thing.
Yeah, there's more of a focus on wrestling, but all the skits are very sports entertainment skits. Like, there's a lot of very silly comedy. There's some over-the-top characters and stuff like this, which is very soap opera-esque, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But that said, yeah, I thought this was a really good show. I mean, I don't think it's as good as they seem to be making it out to be at the time. You know, there's a lot of crap on it. It's very bloated. It's way too long. But as far as like, and it also, if you're watching this, I can't even imagine watching 3 hours of this in one sitting. It's just too much. But as far as just like being consistently entertaining and substantial for the entire show, I'd say this is head and shoulders above all the other ROH shows they've had so far.
Yeah, to me, Low Key and Red doesn't get quite to the level of the main events of the first 2 shows, and I always miss having that absolutely. And I realize those first 2 shows set such a high standard for that kind of match, but I always miss that kind of crazy great match when I'm recommending stuff. But in terms of overall quality, this is easily the best show. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's kept short. There's nothing that's really too painful to watch. I would say Red and Low Key comes close to being kind of like that great gotta see this match. There's fewer shitty skits. Everything feels like it has more of a purpose because it's part of a tournament. It's just, yeah, this is the show that I would say, if you want to see early Ring of Honor and want to see a lot of these early names, this is probably after the 4 shows like my new go-to recommendation because, like you said, I wouldn't recommend watching this all at once because it's kind of exhausting, but you do get to see a ton of kind of indie names from the day, and almost everyone impresses in some way of the major names.
Yes. That said, if you don't care that much about seeing what our early ROH was like, and you just want to see some really good matches, I would still say get Round Robin Challenge because that main event is so awesome. Unless you could find that match somewhere else.
Yeah.
But as far as just like being having variety and a bunch of different kinds of good stuff and even the bad stuff, giving you some good insight into what the company was like, this is definitely the best one.
I agree.
Also, I know we talk a lot about different eras of ROH. In some ways, this is an end of an era too, because this was the last show they had as part of that Takedown Master series, where they had these first 4 ROH DVDs were actually sold in like major retail stores, like Best Buy and places like that, and this is the last one of those that gets that treatment. So then we get more into like the era where I'd say at this point it's really becoming more of like a proper promotion with angles and characters and like different, as opposed to just that whole like special, bunch of matches on a tape kind of thing.
And I'll point out that I don't know how much editing is in it, but the Takedown Masters I did check today is actually at highspots.com for $9.99. So for people that do want to follow along, this is one of the rare early Ring of Honor shows that does seem to be available through non-eBay, or tape trader ways or torrent ways, whatever.
Yeah, and also let me say this: for those of you who want to follow along on the next show, which is Crowning a Champion. The main event of that show is available for free on ROH's YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to, and that's an hour-long Iron Man match. So if you want to see kind of the one big thing on the next show, there's no excuse not to see it because it's completely for free on the internet. And that'll be it, I think, for the 4th episode, which means now when we hold up 4 fingers, it can mean more than just the 4 horsemen. So I'm losing steam with these jokes. We got social media. I hate saying that phrase. Why did I say it? Okay, I just gotta get through this. Okay. If you want to see us on Twitter or contact us, you can contact Matt at MayorMGF. You can contact me at Trevor Dame. If you write to ThROH@gmail.com, someone will read it eventually. We are browsing the message boards at ProWrestlingOnly.com, at F4WOnline.com if you're a subscriber, and at VoicesOfWrestling.com. And there is a 6 in my social insurance number. That's it. Thank you, everybody. We will be back next time for Crowning a Champion. We will finally just find out, because we've lobotomized ourselves and forgotten. We will find out who is the first ever Ring of Honor champion next time on Through the Years. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.